book's loaded, so we can actually start it now. Yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about Birch Farm, because even though we're here to learn about IMOs and ferments and everything like that, there's a lot more to the soil fertility of the farm and what we've planned it to do. So for people who don't know, we are based on a natural farming system, or we're trying to develop a natural farming system. Heavily inspired from Japan, heavily inspired by two Japanese natural farmers, Manasobu Fukuoka of One Straw Revolution, and also another Japanese natural farmer called Yoshikazu Kadoguchi. And we're trying to find a way in which, or raise the question is, we need to grow food as a species and eat. It's one of our fundamental things that we need. But how can we do that in a way that we're also doing it with biodiversity and nature, basically? So the way that we farm here is very minimal intervention when possible. When we have a tour later today, you are going to see a lot of things have shifted. We're actually making the farm a lot more about perennial foods. It's the big focus that we're doing now, because what we've kind of realized is that the direction that our climate is going, we can do all the amount of habitat work and everything. If we don't make the farm resilient, we're going to lose the biodiversity, basically. And so we feel that perennial foods and agroforestry are the way that we can do that. And so we have done a massive shift on the farm this year. We've moved everything around. If anyone saw the recent, what was the magazine we're in? Country Life, Country File, whatever. If anyone saw, yeah, you'll see the drone shot of the beds when they went kind of across like a herringbone. We don't have that anymore. We've actually gone north to south to put more agroforestry rows in, basically. So some of the farm is a bit of a skew width at the minute, but generally we do it in a way where we do a minimal intervention approach as much as possible. Which way do I click? There we go. So the farm is quite wild when it's up and growing. We do focus a lot on things like polyculture, chop and drop. Diversity is probably the one thing that we've learned on this farm is key to everything: soil fertility, biodiversity, habitat. So we focus on diversity in everything that we do. Diversity in plants, so we're aiming to put as many plant families in one bed at one time. Diversity of flowers, diversity of management techniques, absolutely everything, because it's diversity actually that we feel that we get everything out of the system. We don't use any compost here on the farm. We don't use any wood chip. We only use wood chip that we can make on our agroforestry systems, and we've only just really started doing that. So we rely on diversity to make our soil fertility, basically. So we look at root diversity more than anything. Sorry, Jay, it loaded. Sorry, Jay, actually, we need 4 more booklets as well. Four more booklets. Yeah.
People in total,
yeah, 4 more. Cheers. Brilliant. Yeah. So again, you can see. So you can see here, this is our veg beds in the height of summer. We go toe to toe with any other market garden in efficiency. Polycultures don't lower efficiency. They really don't. You can plan them in a way that they're just as efficient, which is always the question with a lot of growers, is about the efficiency of polyculture. The only competition and problems that we get are when we grow monoculture. Basically, that's what we found. So when we put plants of the same type in one bed at one time, there's competition within that because they're competing for the space and what they want. When we grow in polyculture, there's a far more lovely kind of like community and symbiosis between the plants, basically. So that's why we do it as much as possible. So you can see it gets pretty wild, pretty crazy. It kind of looks like a big kind of jumble, but there is plans in all the polycultures that we can keep efficiency. Like I say, agroforestry here is a fundamental part of our fertility program and soil program here on the farm. We've just had one of our soil tests come back. We're doing a project with a PhD student looking at soil fauna. He gave me back the report the other day. He's compared us to a conventional farm, a no-dig market garden, just classic, and then us as a natural farming system. Our soil from across the field has come back with twice the soil fauna and 3 times the fertility. So we're about 8.7 fertility now, and we've never really added any compost or anything like that. The farm relies on things like polyculture, agroforestry, and the ferments and IMOs to kind of maintain the fertility and the soil diversity as well. So, like I said, Manasobu Fukuoka is a massive inspiration for me. He's got this brilliant book called One Straw Revolution. I always say, if anyone's interested in this, please read that book. It's an absolute brilliant book. He's got some amazing quotes. If we kick nature out the front door, she'll come back through the window of a pitchfork. He's also got another really famous one, which is that natural farming is more about the cultivation of the farmer than it is the crop. And that's really, something I believe in. As a manager, I really care for the welfare, especially the mental welfare of the guys who work here on the farm. And we're finding that these natural farming systems, the guys are a lot happier and they're in like a beautiful landscape and stuff like that. But really what this quote is, the more that we interfere with nature to push her out to do something, it's just going to come back twice as hard. If we take out the slug habitat, we're going to get more slugs because we've also taken out the beetle habitat along with it. If we net our brassicas, it's just going to intensify on another crop somewhere else. And so this is really a quote that we follow quite a lot on the farm. We try to do as much minimal intervention as possible. There's two forms of natural farming that we follow. So we've got Mahayana, which is true natural farming. So if anyone has read One Straw Revolution, it's very much about just chuck seeds on the ground, you know, whatever comes up, brilliant. Quite hard to do that as a business. We can't really do that. So really what Birch Farm practices is Hinayana, which is a direction towards Mahayana. So it's got a little bit more human intervention. So Manitoba would be against things like IMOs and ferments. You let the land create the fertility, you do nothing. But like I said, we are annual vegetable growers here at the moment, so we have to do something. And so we follow an approach of Hinayana, which was very much the approach of the Japanese natural farmer Yoshikazu Kadoguchi. And so we do intervention with things like weeding, feeding, the growing of annuals, growing in cell blocks or cell trays, for example. That is part of Mahayana. So we followed that principle of natural farming for our annual production. When we get into the world of food forests and perennials, that's when I think the Mahayana, the more very strict natural farming approach can come into play, basically, which is one of the reasons we want to head more towards that as well. So the principles and the foundations of natural farming are no composting, no weeding, no pesticides, and no cultivation. A lot of what we do now is part of our big no-dig movement we had for the past 20 years as well. There's other kind of things to that as well. We try not to create conditions we depend on, such as compost and machinery. You know, so Manitoba would talk about the plough. We celebrate the plough, the efficiency of the plough and everything to do with the plough. If we don't have the plough, our entire farming system collapses with it. So it's trying to create farming systems that we don't depend on something from outside to come in. That's one reason we've chosen not to use compost, that if one day we couldn't get access to compost, then our whole farming system would collapse. And so to me, that's not a sustainable farming system. Good and evil is a human construct. It doesn't exist in nature. Nature exists in harmony. It really doesn't until we get involved. That's the problem. And so we don't, I will try not to say the word pest. I always try. I still haven't got it down yet. But we don't see slugs as enemies. We don't see cabbage whites as enemies. They're part of the system, and the benefits they bring to the system far outweigh than what they do to our crops. Our farm here has finally reached a point that I don't worry about slugs whatsoever anymore. I just don't have to even think about them because they're going to get gobbled up by the birds and the beetles and everything else that lives on the farm now, basically. Same for the cabbage whites. We don't have to net any of our brassicas anymore. Pigeons usually get chased away by hawks and buzzards that we have because we have so much mice and vole habitat now. And the cabbage whites just get completely decimated by parasitic wasps and everything like that. But we want those insects on the farm because they bring the predators that we also want to control as well. I would even argue that now we're going more perennial. Cabbage whites now have a spot on the farm because they shred back our perennial kales in summer, and then that allows the fresh young leaves to come in the winter so we don't have to do it. So we could argue that cabbage whites have a job on the farm now. Nature cannot be dissected and categorized through microscopes and science. This is a big thing about Manitoba Fukuoka. We are growers, we are farmers, and a lot of the joy and love of that is that we can tell a healthy system by smelling the soil, looking at the growth, tasting it. We don't have to dissect everything all the time down to the microscopic level to prove that it's good. Like, we have to trust in our senses, and natural farming is a sense form of growing. You know, we have to use our sight, smell, sound, hearing, everything that we have to see if we think that the system's working well. And natural farming is understanding our insignificance and futility in controlling nature, basically. Nature will always win at some point, so it's far better to work with it as much as possible. So again, so like I said, it goes pretty crazy, pretty wild. My partner hates that hat. So I have to, I don't know where it is now. I think she's hidden it, to be honest. I think there's also, so Manitoba will talk a lot about philosophy farming and natural farming. You know, it's kind of like looking at it as a philosophy, and I think that's true. So I do think natural farming is very much about what you want from the system. It's not me here telling you this is how you grow from now on, it's the only way. It's a system that you want to create for yourself and what you want to achieve from your land. And people always ask me, you know, how do I do it? Please write a book, do all this. But it's not a system I can be like, right, Monday you do this, Tuesday you do that. You have to be an adaptive grower to what's happening. I get far more inspiration in my natural farming looking at things like art, reading stories, looking how people translate kind of romanticism in different forms. I'm a gardener by trade, so I'm a massive romanticist, to be honest. So I do love this style. So when I look at paintings like this, I see massive trees with grapevines going across, people picking them up. You know that they've added like 20 foot on this tree, you know, to like really like exaggerate it. But I look at that system and I want to adopt that. So now all of our grapevines are being trained up trees as we speak, basically. And we're using trees and not trellis to support our grapevines. I am a bit of a history nut, or sado, whatever you want to do it. I love medieval art, and I look at pictures like this, again, of grapevines, fruit trees, and cultivated annual or barley or wheat underneath it, and I want to take that and mimic that on the farm as much as possible. I always say, if you took a medieval farmer and brought him today, he'd be in Gardens Illustrated by the end of the week, because the way that they used to farm is the trendy way of farming now, basically. It's peasant farming. You know, and that's not derogative. That's a form of farming where you use what you have. You can't buy it in a bottle and bring it in, basically. Agroforestry, perennials, utilising a lot more trees. You've got wildflowers beneath that. And I do think this picture, this kind of like translation of Eden, is how I summarise my vision for Birch Farm, basically. The minute you walk through that gate, I want you to step into a food forest. And as you walk around the farm, you're just going to see different management techniques in a forest, depending on what crop we want it. Natural farming for me is about abundance. Abundance in food, people, animals, life, and nature as much as possible. And so I love this picture to kind of like translate like my vision of Birch Farm. And we have to do it. You know, we're on a slippery slope now, unfortunately. We have to step away from this farming. I love this. I love the turbines and then the farming underneath. We can't sustain this anymore. We've actually reached the point we cannot sustain it anymore. We're no longer sustaining it, basically. And we know the way that our climate is going now. There's many different theories, but the one that everyone's kind of somewhat agreeing on at the moment, we're going to get hotter. So we're looking at 4 degrees in the next 20 years, 8 degrees in the next 40, 50 years. London will be like Mallorca, the Scottish borders will be like Kent and Sussex. Manchester will have London weather. And we're looking at about a 50% decline in all our native species of plants in this country over the next 50 years. So we're going to lose half our native plants, and with that, we're going to lose biodiversity that rely on those plants as well. It's coming in such a quick way that we as a species are very adaptable. That's why we're kind of the top. A lot of our animals won't be able to adapt that quickly. And like I said, we have to eat, and farming defines it. 70% of this country is farming. Our land, 70% of the UK is taken up by farming, which is a huge amount of swathe of land. We have to find a way which we can produce food with biodiversity for the future of both of us, basically. And so that's a really big, important thing. So like I say, climate resilience is a really big part of what the farm stands for now. We want to step away from this, you know, green and pleasant land, I would say green and depressing land of England. We want to break up fragmented farming. We want to bring in more trees. We want to bring in more biodiversity as much as possible. The snowball has started, so we've gone past the first bit. So the coral reefs are dying off now. We can't save them anymore. They will disappear. That is the first step into our climate change. We can't go back. It's just going to go forward now. So we have to adapt. I always say this, the greatest challenge for us now is to create a resilient farming system for us. Most civilization collapses in history have been linked to annual agriculture as well. Like, that is one factor in it, and we are stepping into that way now. Like I said, last year the UK is down about 800 million in wheat. Is it Canaries at the moment? There's some part of Spain that's going through an awful drought at the minute, really, really hot. So we're looking at being as hot this year. So we could be losing $1 billion. So already our carbohydrate annual farming is collapsing. You know, 800 million, 1 billion this year, and it's going to progressively get worse as we step on. And rainfall, irrigation is a fundamental part of food growing now. Quite a worry when in this country all our water is controlled by private companies as well. But this is from last year, 2024. I love that we're still wet. That always makes me laugh. But anyway, yeah, that's us. But Germany, so we have friends in Germany who do a lot of syntropic agriculture. They didn't see rain for 4 months last year, basically. And out of all of it, their syntropic systems did far better than their annual system. So we do have to take this seriously now. And if anyone read this study that came out a couple of months ago, it's really, really terrifying. Basically, MI5 and MI6, the greatest threat to UK security is basically climate change. That is the greatest threat. So we're looking, I think, in the next 50 years, projected, it's not, you know, guaranteed, but about 2 billion climate refugees over the next 50 years in the way that we're going. So it's really, really important we have to kind of solve this. And like I said, natural farming is a way that I feel that we can. So, you know, here's the farm full of life. There's hedgehogs, badgers, snakes, absolutely everything growing in that. And these are still very much productive market garden veg beds. So like I said, polyculture is key to that. What we try to do as a basic is we get 5 vegetable families in one bed at one time, and every bed must have an aromatic herb in it as well. And when we think about the plants that we're going to use, we're thinking about the 5 plant families, but we're also thinking about the roots, what part they have to play in that. So we know that grasses have a really good fungal connection to plants where brassicas don't. So in our brassica beds, we'll always add a monocot within that polyculture to help with the fungi. So we use Japanese black oats basically as part of our polyculture. But what we try to do as a basic is five different families in one bed at one time, and an aromatic herb must be present in every bed. Whether you're going to pick it or not, it doesn't matter. Aromatic plants have a healing quality around them, like they're really good for us, they're really good for plants. And actually the strong scent of the aromatic plants is a bit of a deterrent to things like slugs and caterpillars and stuff like that as well. Whereas the predators absolutely love them. So it's a way of bringing in predators as well. I really recommend you look at the work of Dr. Christine Jones. This is Dr. Christine Jones. She's got an amazing talk on YouTube. She's done a lot of studies in polyculture, and she's just starting to kind of like release her findings. And it's Dr. Christine Jones that's found that monoculture systems create competition, monoculture systems deplete the ground, polyculture systems have the complete opposite basically. They're more supporting systems, they help the soil. Also, a lot of what we do here is chop and drop as part of our fertility program. So we get the plants, we chop them, we drop it as a mulch on the ground throughout the year. That's also been found by Dr. Christine Jones to be the best superior way of raising fertility. Dr. Christine Jones is saying that we should step away from thick compost mulches and actually head towards using plants, root diversity, and chop and drop as a way to build fertility. Mycorrhiza, really important fungi, and we love it. One of the reasons that we love it is because we can see a lot of it, the hyphae in the ground, but it's also a lot of the other saprophytic fungi, the fungi that consume plant material that are just as important, and we need to feed those by giving them chop and drop, for example, and stuff like that. So we grow everything in polyculture, and we have done for 5 years now, but it's quite exciting now to have Dr. Christine Jones releasing a lot of that information and the positives of it. So again, just an example. We utilise a lot of weeds here on the farm. We pick them for the restaurant. So we do sell them as a cash crop thing as well, but the weeds just increase the polyculture. So if we're putting 5 veg families in one bed, 5 to 10 different families of weeds will start to creep in, and then you realise you have a polyculture of like 20, 25 at one time. We need weeds as part of our farming system, and we've created it for that. We're not scared of weeds, we use them. They are our mulching plants throughout the year, basically. So when it's really hot, we'll come through, we'll sickle the weeds down by hand, and we'll drop them on the beds to trap the morning transpiration and keep the beds irrigated as much as possible. There's so much kind of chemical makeup within the plants that when you drop them on the plant, they give the soil and the microbes everything they want as well. There's loads of different chemical compounds from the diversity of weeds that we want to include in that as well. So weeds play a fundamental part of our soil fertility program. And this kind of shows how extreme we'll take those polycultures. You can't actually see them, but they did work pretty well. So this is wheat and grass and dock, but there's loads of garlic and broad beans in there as well. So we're trying to push it to the absolute limit we can as much as possible. And we're getting great results out of it as well. And again, you know, people are always like, you know, what about light? What about competition? I have never seen competition hurt my bed whatsoever in any polycultures I've done. Same as my agroforestry. So here we've got beetroots. You can't even see the beetroots. They're under there, but we're still getting amazing, delicious beetroots. We have to irrigate less because there's so much leaf surface. The morning transpiration's being caught. So like I said, irrigation is a really important thing we have to think of as food growers. So this is part of our irrigation program, and everything just grows. And like I said, the one thing I've discovered on this farm, just like us, we thrive in diversity. Plants do the same. They love being part of the community, and that's what we try to do. So we've got kales, beans, fat hen, weeds, onions, all mixed into like one bed at one time, along with things like thistles and sow thistles and stuff like that. And we're still getting really amazing, delicious produce from it as well. And again, and so like we allow a lot of self-seeding and carpets to happen underneath. They basically become our ground covers. Like ground covers is a big part of that. We never want soil showing. That's a really important thing. But equally, we don't just want to dump a load of compost on it either. We want to allow the weeds and the plants to do that job for us. And I would rather a farming landscape that looks like this. So this is a food forest by Wouter van Eck in the Netherlands. I think food forests are the key to the future. I think they are a very serious agricultural system that we should take seriously. At the moment, they kind of sit into this like kooky permaculture at the end of your garden world. I don't think they have that. It's not fair. They are very productive ecological systems. I would rather see a landscape that wasn't dairy farming to make 2 hard cheeses for Tesco's, as it currently is, and I would rather see a landscape like this that feeds and sustains us while building biodiversity. And so Birch Farm is very much about agroforestry and food forest as well, so just as much. And here's a really good chart. I always show this chart, but it's a really good chart to show the way that we want our farming system to go. And actually the best way for us for carbon sequestration for the soil, biodiversity, minimal inputs, and ecology is basically, is food forest. And it has the closest link to a natural forest, which is always the ecosystem we're trying to mimic in all our growing, basically. So that's what we're trying to strive towards as well. Since we've done our agroforestry, I would say actually this year, the soil has improved so much, it's unbelievable. So we were a dairy pasture for decades. So we had slurry every 2 weeks, tractors every week, spraying, cutting, massive biodiversity loss. Our agricultural food forest was a maize field. So I call it the triangle of death. So it was cultivation, maize, and fertilizer. After about 5 years now, the soil is in a constant tilth. It's always alive. You can actually smell it from standing up. You know, Jack, who's my other grey, he's like, I don't know, he looks like 7 foot. But he can smell the soil standing up that far now. And a lot of that is also down to our agroforestry. The trees have done a lot of the fertility program for us. And what I always wanted to prove on this farm, so when we planted our agroforestry, so this is one of our food forests that hugs down here, 2.5 acres, we just put the trees in. We didn't put compost or inputs or anything, because I want everyone to walk away from here to realise that when we have to fertile that land again, which is coming soon, all we have to do is put trees in and they'll do it for us. And after about 4 or 5 years now, the trees are doing it for us. They are our fertility program just as much. So agroforestry is a fundamental point in natural farming soil fertility program. So you can see here, so these are agroforestry. So agroforestry with vegetables growing in the middle. You can see the landscape in the distance. I call it the North Devon veneer. And again, so we let it go pretty quiet. So we have a coppice rotation in our agroforestry. So a lot of our agroforestry is planned to be coppiced once we need the light levels again. I would argue that shade is probably one of our biggest commodities now, to be honest, because the sun is so intense in our summers. We are North Devon, rain, wind every single day. Leafy greens, salads and brassicas are our crop, basically. So shade is a huge part of what we need, so they don't go bitter and bolt. And so the agroforestry does that for us. It's a farming system. If we want the light, we are quite happy to prune the trees to let the light in as well. But we can do it in a way where we can half prune the tree and have dappled shade, light. It gives us a lot more freedom to kind of create the conditions we want to do. But a lot of our agroforestry is designed to be coppiced eventually and then started again. First year we actually managed to grow beans, because like I said, they usually get blown out and blown away, like what's it called? Not Alice in Wonderland, the other one, Wizard of Oz. And so our agroforestry now allows us to grow beans, basically. And the tree roots from this agroforestry system grow under the path, and then the beans are taking all of that benefit up as well. And again here, so agroforestry. And a lot of our agroforestry is designed for habitat as well. So a lot of these agroforestry rows are purely for beetles. So beetles like to make their nest in grass tufts over the winter. The one thing we always remove from our vegetable gardens or market gardens is grass. It's the first thing we kick out, but grass is really important for beetle habitat, and beetles are our ground slug control. If we don't have beetles, we have slugs everywhere, basically. And so a lot of these are allowed to get as weedy as possible to allow the beetles to have a habitat. I always say this, I don't know if it's true, some bloke told me it, he could be having me on, but beetles hunt at about 25 to 30 metres a night, but they'll use that to get back so they don't get gobbled up in the day. So our agroforestry rows are 12 metres apart, that the beetle can go from one agroforestry row to the other, spend the day there, and then keep moving. It's why I don't use any chickens or geese either, because they also gobble up beetles and the things that eat the slugs as well. So we just rely on slugs for everything. So when we started the farm, we did it kind of classic no-dig market garden style to begin with. So we marked out the beds. Russell trimmed the beds out. But what we wanted to do was what I saw in Japan, because I was very lucky to go to Japan, and we wanted to create Japanese organic raised beds, basically. And so what we ended up doing was bringing in loam, digging out the paths, raising the beds. One of the reasons we have to do this is in North Devon, there's so much rain, we can't grow at ground level, it just washes away. So these act as mini swales, and they take the water out for us as well. But what we found is, because we're a lot of agroforestry, it raises our crops above the tree roots, and so we don't have to worry about tree roots getting into the crops anymore, basically. So it's also a way that we can grow annual vegetables with very close agroforestry systems as well. So this is how we raise all our beds. They're all grown as raised beds. They always get covered with hay or grass or weeds. In the first years when we had nothing, we used hay from our meadows to cover the plants. IMO, which was what you're going to be learning today, would be scattered on the bed to inoculate the soil to get it going, hay on top, and then would spray the ferments on top of the hay. And the hay, being such a carbon source, absorbs those sprays and uses it to keep the soil alive, basically. It's also really important habitat as well. Really, really important habitat for things to live in. Again, so here's another classic example. So raised bed, polyculture design going in there as well. One thing that we do here as well is we only reset a bed when we need it. So we don't spend all winter mulching. It's a decision that we've made as a team. We spend winter pruning agroforestry. So when we need a vegetable bed, we prep it 2 weeks before we need it. That is, again, a balance. It's great in the sense that the beds neighbouring it are absolutely full of birds and beetles, and anything that wants to come out and eat our crops get gobbled up, because these become really important habitat as well. I value that more than having the bed ready to go, but if it's wind, snow, rain, whatever, the guys have to get out there and prep the bed. So it's kind of like a balance between that. But we only prep the beds 2 weeks before we need them. Ferments and inoculations, which everyone's here to learn about, has been a big part of the farm. So we're going to be doing a lot of this over the next 2 days. This is one of our herbal medicines that we use, things like ginger, garlic, licorice, angelica. We use it as a medicinal, basically. It's really good for the soil. It's full of like polysaccharides. Really good for things like powdery mildew. So we use a lot of OHN on our squashes when they start to get a bit powdery in the summer. IMO, which we're going to be focusing on today. This is how we collect our inoculant. So we go into the woods. I'm not going to spoil it because Russell's going to take you through it. But we basically bury a carbohydrate, use that carbohydrate to capture things like fungi, bacteria, yeast, everything that's part of that soil, bring it back to the farm, and then we grow it through composting, or not composting, but fermented piles, and then we use that as our inoculant, basically. So no more buying mycorrhizal powders or anything like that. Most of them die the minute you open the packet. This is about creating something local to your area that knows what your situation is like. You know, so the idea is that it's going to basically survive a lot longer, basically, because it knows what your weather's like, what your wind, everything. So it's about collecting a local inoculant from your area. So here what we're going to do today, so we grow it and grow it and grow it into massive piles, and then we'll scatter it onto the beds, and then we use the weeds or the mulch, the weeds or the hay as a mulch on top to protect the IMO, because we don't want UV getting on it either. So we use that as a protection over the winter. So that's how we get a lot of our beds ready for the winter, is IMO, chop the weeds back, pile them on top, let them inoculate the bed, and then we come to plant the following year. Fish amino acid, fish head and guts in a barrel, basically. We're going to be making this tomorrow. We use it as a nitrogen source. We don't really care about that, to be honest. What it is fats, oils, carbs, and the soil microbes devour it. I mean, it's gone in seconds, basically. And we use it as a recycled. I grow for the pub as part of the business. That's my market. And so we take all the old fish head and guts that they have from filleting, we bring it back to the farm, we turn it into an inoculant for the farm as well. JMS, which is a IMO in a barrel, not as good as IMO, but it's something you can make within 24 hours. We use a lot of this for our nursery and our veg beds in the summer. When we're too busy in the summer, we can't make IMO piles all the time because we're too busy. We swap over to this and we use this as our summer inoculant, basically. All it costs is 2 boiled potatoes, and if you grow the potatoes, it basically costs you nothing then. Again, I don't want to spoil these things for you all. We tried to make our own potting mix. We've used it all up this year, unfortunately, because we've created a nursery, but generally we can make enough potting mix to do all our annual vegetables at the moment. We want to increase that to then cover the whole farm. We make it using bokashi composting. So we bokashi a pile in the glass house. It ferments for 3 months. It turns into a worm bin. The worms just find their way in there, and the worms then break it down to a vermicompost, and that's our potting mix. So those soil blocks behind you, soil blocks we make with our own potting mix. But like I said, we've kind of used it all up now as well. But all of these are our homemade potting mix that we're really happy with. And it's taken us about 3 years to make a potting mix that we're happy with. So we're really happy with this one. But we make it in-house, and then it doubles up as a table for the nursery, which is always important as well. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. So that's our potting mix when it comes out. They're all mixed up. When we first started, there's Russell. As you can see Russell a lot. Russell basically runs our soil program here on the farm. I will say this, Russell and myself, but Russell, who's been taking charge of it, 5 years he's been adapting this for market gardens. And so your 2 days here is also to pick Russell's brains as much as possible, because what we've tried to do is make this as efficient as possible for market garden farming systems. And we're really, really happy with how we've done it. And so Russell's found a lot of nuances in doing this. And so it's really like, you want to pick Russell's brains while you're here as well, because he'll say a lot of things where he's cut corners and sped things up and made it more efficient as well. But here's Russell making one of our worm bins. When I studied in America, I really wanted to have something called a continuous airflow bin. So if anyone's had worms, you've got to get them out, you've got to make a volcano, get a light on them. Can't do that as a farm, too much labour. And so we use this system where we don't have to do that. We basically scratch the compost from underneath and it just falls out, and then the worms live in the top layer, so we don't have to do any of that separation. So it's an efficient way for us to gather vermicompost, which is worm compost, which is what we want a lot of, because it basically stops all root transplant shock. It's that strong. I think 1 tonne of worm manure is about equivalent to 8 tonnes of cow manure. So it's really, really powerful stuff. So that does go in our potting mix as well. And I love soil blocks. I just think they're great. They take a bit longer to make, but they're twice as quick to plant. So I think the time lost is kind of nothing, to be honest, personally. So I love them. We've done them a lot. You'll see the glass house. We've planted thousands of blocks last week. What I love about them is that they work with our potting mix. The gaps between them mean that the roots get air pruned, so they don't get root bound. So they can stay in the glass house for about 3 to 4 weeks longer than they have to, which is great. And they're just so easy to plant. I'm sick and tired of sticking my little finger in cell trays and breaking the cell tray to pieces. At the moment, we have to use cell trays because we've run out of our compost, basically. But we love soil blocks here, and we're going to have a little soil block demo for everyone tomorrow to see if they do like it or don't like it, pretty much. But we do a lot of it here using a homemade potting mix, and we grow a lot of our vegetables as long as our mix lasts in blocks as much as possible. And they come out looking like this. They're absolutely brilliant and healthy. They look like little chocolate brownies. And they're just an absolute joy to plant. They're so easy. And since we've used blocks, again, we don't get transplant shock problems because people aren't sticking their finger in and ripping the roots apart. You're literally just placing them in the ground. So you get a lot more success rate from having them as well, of what we found. We take a lot of the food waste from the restaurant as well. We bokashi it, we ferment it, we turn it into something for our agroforestry planting. We make our own inoculant to do that. So we make something called lactobacillus, which everyone's going to be making tomorrow. It's basically just milk whey. So we take the milk in our shop that's going out of date, we bring it up, we turn it into lactobacillus. We use lactobacillus on absolutely everything. It's used in our glass house to stop things like dampening off. It's used on our plants to help with things like powdery mildew and soil, just as a soil amendment as well. We use it a lot in compaction problems because it's great at alleviating compaction in soil, and we use it to ferment food waste as part of our bokashi system as well. So we bring the food waste up, Russ will make this, he will ferment the food waste, it will come out of the barrel, looks like what it goes in as, but it just comes out a bit stickier. And then generally what we'll do is we'll use that in our wheelbarrows, and then we'll use that in a lot of our agroforestry planting now. And so each tree hole gets a good dose of kind of bokashi food waste on top of it as well. Soil microbes, love it. And Martin will talk a lot about this as well. That will be gone in about 4 weeks. It's completely disappeared. You may find an onion skin and that's about it by the end. How it's always described to me is this idea of quorum sensing. It's this idea of using lactobacillus in farming, basically. If you imagine a party, really boring, someone comes in, beer and music, party picks up, that's lactobacillus, basically. It energizes the soil. Everything wants to consume it, but equally lactobacillus wants to consume the nasty things as well. So it's just a perfect thing. So we spray gallons of lactobacillus on the farm. But our farming systems are really important as well. It's not just the amendments. We follow Japanese natural farming as well. So here's just a good example. So we won't compost beds. We will allow them to get as weedy as possible. We'll chop those weeds down. We'll put them down as a mulch. And then as we plant, we'll take out any roots that we find as we go. So we like to do this as Japanese farming. So these are just examples of Japanese natural farming. I like the feeling of growing in the farm soil. I don't like the feeling of growing in compost personally. I like the fact that I'm putting plants in the loam of the farm. And that's what I really like to do. And like I said, with agroforestry, the agroforestry is breaking that loam apart and it's just making it an absolute joy to plant into now. So this is generally how our farming practices work and what we're trying to do, very much inspired by Japanese natural farming. And so you can hear Jack as an example. So he's got our garlic planter 3000, so he's planting the garlic, and then he'll put all the debris from around that back on top of the garlic, basically, and then we'll use that material to grow the garlic through there. Just an example, Jack planting one of our polycultures. So our polycultures do get quite diverse and dense. We've got things like beans, lettuce, beetroots, herbs, onions, and there'll be some flowers dotted in there as well. And then they end up looking like that, basically. like I said, we've never had a fertility problem. So people always say we don't use compost. What about fertility? We've never had an example of fertility problems here. I would argue that it seems like the farm just gets more fertile as we go on. And I've never been in a situation where I'm like, oh, I need to get compost on that to help it out. The only time we may use something is we have animals on the other side. If a bed needs extending a little bit more, we may add a bit of manure on the end just to extend the bed, basically. And that's really that's all we use it for, pretty much. We have done trials by using manure because it's something we have. Problems seem to start whenever we start to use mulches, basically. Manisobu, if we kick nature out the door, she'll come back through a window. For some reason, when we start to do a little bit of interfering, that's when our problems start to arise on the farm. So generally, we don't use any of that, but we haven't had it. And again, the idea of competition, if you follow planting distances correctly, you just don't have those problems. I've never seen a situation where competition has been an issue on the farm. It's the same with a lot of our trees. Don't plant near walnuts, don't plant near eucalyptus. We've got plants growing right underneath walnut trees and eucalyptus trees, and they're perfectly happy. Definitely cherry laurel, I wouldn't put anywhere, and leylandii, but there are outliers like there are in every society. But I've never seen a situation that, from me, everything wants to grow in harmony, basically. And like I said, we grow weeds, thick weeds, nettles, thistles. We sell a lot to the restaurant. The weeds are such an important part. Weeds are our best pollinators. It is what our ecosystem wants to eat as well. So they are really key to that, and they do the work for us. Lovely deep roots that. We allow nettles come in. The guys hate me for it. You'll usually hear them screaming in the field. But we try to really push it to the boundary as we can, because we know things like peacock butterflies and the minerals that nettles bring to the bed are just so key to it. And the guys will manage it. They'll manage it through sickling. So once they feel that actually that cabbage is starting to suffer a little bit, they'll come through with sickles, chop, drop it as a mulch, and then just move on, basically. And then the cabbage should get a little bit of a head start. Generally, when we plant a bed, we sickle it for the first 2 months. We give the crop a bit of a head start, and then after about 2 months, it seems that the crops have such a head start, the weeds can never catch up, basically. And then we take a step back, and we allow weeds and crops to grow together. But like I said, they can never. We also plant in something called the French intensive method, created by, or really popularized by a chap called Alan Chadwick in California. We plant basically 25% closer to what the RHS will tell you. That's the best way I can describe it. So beetroots go at 10 centimetres apart, brassicas go in at like 35 centimetres apart. And the reason we do that as well is that we want the leaves to almost be like that during maturity. And that's a way that we can inhibit a lot of weeds, but also trap morning transpiration and fertility as well. And our polyculture is designed to, so it's not an agroforestry workshop, but our agroforestry is designed in stratas and layers. So we've got big trees, medium trees, shrubs, herbaceous, and that's how our polyculture is designed as well. We plan it more as layers, so that by the time that the kales are kind of like touching and engulfing the bed, we've already harvested the beetroots, we've already harvested the lettuce, we've already harvested the herbs. So that's how we plan our polyculture. So eventually the bed polyculture will end up as 1 or 2 main species, but we harvested 4 or 5 times in between that time, basically. So that's how we plan it as much as possible. But the weeds are key to our fertility program in our soil. They are our fertility builders as well. I think I've already showed this, but that's another example again, self-seeding. So we've got the lovely water pepper, the persicaria as a weed, just coming in. We pick that for the restaurants. We don't have to use chilies. We use that instead in the restaurant. Lamb's lettuce or tree spinach, just seeds everywhere. And then we've got like self-seeded lettuces, beautiful broad beans coming up. And you can't see it now, but in between the broad beans, there was beetroots as well that we'd already harvested by the time that happened in there. And this is really pushing it. So again, natural farming. So we only want the squash. So we'll only prep the ground that the squash is going in, because this is absolutely filled with life. We leave it a few weeks, and basically the squash just does the job for us, and we don't really have to worry about it anymore. So that's our farming system as part of our soil program as well. Chop and drop, really key as part of that as well. And again, it just looks like this, but there is an efficiency in there. Everything's picked. The guys know it. It's taken us a couple of years to create that efficiency. How we've done it, if anyone's interested, is we've categorized picks. And so we have salad, root, brassica, beans, peas, squash, and so on. And then we build a polyculture around that. So salad's really easy. So the guys basically pick a salad bag from a bed. So we put the salad bag in one bed, and the guys will pick a salad bag in a bag rather than working off different ones. Chard and kale go together because that's part of our cooked greens. And so when they're harvesting the brassicas for cooked greens, they're also harvesting chard as part of that polyculture. And so what we've done is we've categorized it and built polycultures around the harvest, basically, to make it efficient. And it works really, really well. And again, just more examples. Cleavers, I love cleavers. Really good as part of our ferments, FPJ, and fermented plant extracts, because it's got a really powerful growth hormone in it that we want to capture and spray onto our plants. And it's just absolutely brilliant for covering the ground. And then the guys on the farm will usually pick it and make it into a tonic to drink as well. So we love things like cleavers, but we're still getting masses of beans. There's no reason to compost that bed, you know, that's kind of what it is. Slugs were bad in the beginning, like they were, I'm not gonna lie. When we went from a dairy pasture into a natural farm, the slugs actually ate the tree leaves off the trees. So we had no tree leaves for a year. We had 38 beds, and one bed we picked about 2 or 3 kilos of slugs off it. It was bad, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I had an existential crisis. I had to go home and get a hug from my mum, to be honest, because my entire passion and dream was collapsing around me, and I was like, everyone was right, you know. I'm lucky that I grow for a restaurant, and so I have a conversation with chefs. All we told the chefs was, look, they're smashing this, but I can grow this. The chefs changed the recipe in the pub to what we could grow. We doubled down on that. That allowed us to then push through this period and still maintain our farming systems. I'm so happy we did. Now I don't worry about it. We allowed the extremity to happen. Nature saw what was happening and then sent the army of birds and beetles and centipedes, mice and voles and baby snakes and hedgehogs, and now they look after it. I'm actually excited to find slugs now, which sounds crazy, because then I know that I'm going to have the predators there as well. Was bad. This is a problem that we've got with all of our food growing currently, all of our gardens, everything, is that we've created such a human managed system for so long that when we stop it, nature comes back hard, and we have a 2 to 5 year period that you're just going to get a pest overload because the landscape isn't built around nature anymore. If you have the ability to push through that and just take it, it honestly, I swear down, it comes back and then it looks after itself. The problem that we're going to have with our farming, again, is that we need to have this 2 to 5 year buffer to allow it all to come back. The thing about slugs and a lot of things that eat our crops, if I plough that field up, I've pushed the beetles out there for 10 years. They won't come back for 10 years, even if I stopped it again. The slugs will come back in 20 minutes. That's the problem that we have, is that the predators take a lot longer to come back. But once you get that balance and equilibrium, it's just a joy. I don't have to wake at night thinking I'm going to come into this every single day. Literally, the ground was moving. I mean, that's how I can describe it. I've never seen so many slugs in my life. I think it was at this point I've realised, what am I doing with my life? That I'm laying 500 boards down every day to capture slugs and flipping them over every morning, and we weren't getting the jobs done, that I just said, sod this, I'm just going to push through, basically, because this is the farming we wanted to do. And like I said, I'm so happy we did, because then the beetles came back. I always joke that we're beetle farmers here, to be honest, because that's kind of what we focus on. A lot of my focus now is I don't actually really think about the food that much. We plant it and everything like that. I think about what interaction our farming is going to have on the landscape and what that's going to do to the biodiversity. That's my main concern as the manager now. So beetles are a really important part of our kind of like slug control as well. Basically love slug habitat. That's what I can say. If you have slug habitat, you'll have beetles as well. So that's the problem, that we remove a lot of our slug habitat and kick the beetles out at the same time. Toads as well, frogs, newts, they've all come back to the farm from something that had no life. And I will say in the beginning, the doom and gloom about climate and the way that we're going, it is quite serious. But what I will say the farm has done, how quickly it comes back. In like 4 years, we've gone from a desolate landscape with no bird song, no sound, and now when you walk around the farm, you're seeing song thrushes, sparrows, birds, and everything. So I will say that it comes back so quickly just making these changes. I love the fact that I don't have to buy in masses of compost every year and get it on the farm, and because you realise, people think, someone called me the dark Charles Dowding the other day. I'm not the dark. I love composting. I'm not against composting whatsoever. I did a research project in composting. What I noticed that once I mulched the beds and wood chipped the paths, I've basically ended up with a sterilised landscape. I pushed everything out for what I want. And this idea of like, oh, you live on the boundary and you have that, and let's have this idea together. We've gone past that now. Like I said, land and space is going to be so important for our biodiversity. We have to create a system where we coexist as much as possible. And so that's what a big part of the farm has been about. And I just want to put this in, I put it in, perennial foods, really important, fantastic then grown agroforestry systems. This is Mashua. Tropolium tuberosum, you get an edible root crop, you get probably one of the best perennial salad leaves, you get the most delicious edible flower in the plant world, tastes like maple syrup. That is off like 2 plants, basically. Very productive as well. So this is what we're trying to push more as well. So here's Mashua, it's really beautiful as well. You get a lot of variety ones, but they're not as productive. I actually got this in a church sale back in the village I'm from, Beckley. I got an amazing strain because that thing, one plant will produce about 10 kilos of roots every single year. So I'm quite happy with that. And so we're pushing a lot more on perennial foods now. Perennial salads, our perennial salads are really, really good as well. Because even though I've got this belief in natural farming, there's something about the annuals that are a little bit too takey at the moment that we're trying to change as well. Our hope, we don't have polytunnels here, and it's a decision that we've made as a company. I love polytunnels, and I wish I had polytunnels every single day, but we made that choice because we felt that if we had polytunnels, we'd focus on that, and we wouldn't focus on things like this. But now I'm so glad we didn't, because like next year, we're not growing any early spring annual salads anymore. We're just going to focus purely on perennial salads because they're more delicious than annual salads. And we've had, so I'm a bit wind burnt as well at the moment, but we've had about a 50-mile-an-hour wind for about 5 days, constant. The annuals have absolutely hated it. The perennials just love life and they don't mind it. And that's what a lot about the resilience is as well. And perennials are really important as part of a fertility soil program as well, because they're locking in your carbon. The root systems are connecting everything like a fibre optic cable. So the fungi, for example, will shoot down those perennial root lines and spread across your field. So what we're aiming to do is the annuals will grow when they want to grow in summer, and we'll use the perennials during the hunger gap, basically, when the annuals need a bit of protection, because that's what we don't want. And like I said, we want to grow our food outside as much as possible, because that's how we build habitat at the same time. So perennial foods is a big part of that as well. But that's the farm. Looks very wild, very beautiful, but it is efficient. We are a market garden. I do have profit and loss. I have to make money, but I'm lucky that the company's been built around the idea that I have a guaranteed buyer that buys everything, and my job is to plan the produce that I meet the needs of the company and I don't overgrow or undergrow, basically. So that's the big thing. I am in no disillusion, like perennial foods and stuff like that. It works in the world of chefs at the moment, not community. I put kohlrabi and yellow cucumbers in the shop before, and I always say I thought I was going to get burnt on the Wicker Man. We're not there yet, but we need chefs to make it for the communities to use it. So I'm lucky in that I purely grow for chefs, basically, and the bakery and the shop and stuff like that. Cool, brill. Right, so any questions on that? That's a very quick push on the principles of the farm. But hopefully what the talk was designed to do was say that we're going to be learning about IMOs and ferments and solutions over the 2 days, but also agroforestry, polyculture, biodiversity, and the way that we manage the farm is also key to our fertility program as well. What we're going to be showing you to make over the 2 days, there are tools to help you do that, but it's an overall system that kind of like builds on itself, basically. But any questions on the farm or anything? Yeah.
Can I ask you a very quick question?
Yeah.
In that picture of the fermenting, the composting you were doing, did you have sheep's wool in there?
Yeah, so we have sheep on the other side, and we use the sheep wool as a somewhat kind of like, basically because it's a Bokashi system, we don't want oxygen as much as possible, and so we try to find whatever we can, and so we use like thick sheep wool soaked wet, pack it down and press it as a way to like cap the Bokashi heat, basically. If it doesn't break down, so usually what happens is when we take it out, we then use it as dressing on our glasshouse paths, basically. But it's to act as a kind of like airproof cap on top, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, we love it for paths as well, like path material on our beds. Yeah. We have, I don't know nothing about animals. It's Chris who does the animals, but ours are Dartmoor sheep. And so I think their wool is quite like tough as well. So sometimes we've had it for like 3 years and it's just like sat there, basically. Yeah, well, Herdwicks, yeah. Good for rugs, yeah, but any more? Yeah.
Your 4 beds, you had salads, roots, brassicas, and what was the other one?
We have like courgette, squash, like cucurbits kind of things as well.
Can I ask you, the name, you're a bit of an island. I got the impression you're a bit of an
island. Yeah.
Is there a kind of a minimum size that you can be a successful island?
I've got a garden that's smaller than this table, and I still do food, forest, and natural farming and biodiversity as much as it works. It works in everything, yeah. What natural farming is, and really, places like Great Dixter and Fergus are really good at this, and this is where I heard the term, is that actually what we're trying to do is make a mosaic of habitat. And it's creating a mosaic of different forms of management and habitat that actually makes the biggest amount of biodiversity. And so what we try to do here is we have areas like a no-dig market garden, but we also have areas of agroforestry. We have areas where we leave thick weed mulches, but we have areas that we're quite happy to dig. And so by actually, what we don't want to do is create just one system across the board that's the same. We want to do so many multiple different ways of managing that. So if your garden is only this big, have a little weedy patch, have an open patch, have a space for perennials, have a space for annuals, because actually making that mosaic of different things is what increases diversity in your habitat, basically. But you can do it from a tiny little garden like I have to us, which is 17 acres. And especially on the agroforestry point of view, which is a natural farming system, I would argue, in places like the Netherlands, Wout van Eck, or Germany, Guttenbossel, or Hofverde, they're doing it on the landscape level. You know, they're taking old dairy pastures because their climate's harder than ours at the moment, because every 1 degree as our climate goes up, it moves 150 miles. So at the moment, Middle Europe's getting a hit of it. They're turning all of their pastures into food forests now because it's one of like the only ways they can produce food, but they're doing it on like hectareage basically. And Wouter van Eck, he literally bungs a tree in a hole and then walks away and nothing else after that for biodiversity and stuff like that. But for our farming system, it's about making a mosaic. So like one example of that is we grow potatoes, we grow new potatoes for the restaurant. We harvested all the new potatoes and then like responses like, oh, let's put some hay down or something to protect the soil. 1 year we didn't do that and we just left it and we came back and the potato bed was absolutely packed with solitary bees. They used the bare earth banks of our raised beds from the potatoes to then make nests. And so part of our program now is that when you harvest root crops here, potatoes, drusen, artichokes and things like that, I always tell them I want you to act like a pig, and they literally rip them out the ground, pull them out the ground. We don't reg the bake over, we leave it. We leave it bare. So they make loads of undulations, they make like little summer ephemeral ponds and everything like that, because we saw that actually the potato beds after they were used by solitary bees and stuff. And we'll only prep the bed 2 weeks before we need to plant it. So that's like one management technique. Like management diversity is really important as well. Like you have to manage crops differently to help that biodiversity as much as possible as well, if you get that. But you can do it on a small garden to a big garden, you know. Yeah. Go. I will go. Sorry, no, yeah.
Okay, so one is about the competition. So, for example, you showed you grow garlic in polycultures.
Yeah.
And it said that garlic doesn't grow big enough when it's
there's
too much competition.
Yeah.
So, how?
Never seen it. It's like, you know, polyculture, don't put alliums and beans together. I literally have onions and beans growing together, and I've never seen an issue for it. Garlic would be that the water, because it's the water that swells them up. And so, but I mean, we've grown garlic in wheat fields, wheat and beans and everything like that. And we've had, garlic is a very good crop for us. And we've never seen any loss on it.
Like perennial grasses as well.
Yeah. So the ryegrasses creep in and stuff like that. But usually the polyculture is so diverse, the grasses never really have that head. I mean, you don't want to go back to a lawn, definitely, like that's the problem. But when we do our garlic, there's also a thick layer of weed mulch to start it as well. So when we plant our garlic, so with our garlic cloves, we'll take the garlic cloves, we'll cover them in IMO and biochar, lactobacillus, and then we'll plant them, and then we'll put that much kind of like weed mulch back on top, and they'll pop through. We direct sow the broad beans into that, and then the broad beans come up. And then once the garlic has a head start, then we let the grasses and the wheat start to creep in, basically. And that's how we've done it, and that's what we do. Sometimes, like at the moment, we've got garlic growing on its own, only because we've moved it to the agricultural forest, and there's nothing to really put with it. But garlic has been very reliable us every single year. So I would say that shot you saw there, it wasn't any less to the garlic that we grow now, basically. But we do get a lot of rain here, like that's another big thing. Yeah. Yeah. But there's a thick weed mulch when we plant that garlic as well. So the garlic is always the first thing to come up, and then other things kind of like succession into that as well. Yeah. Sorry, no, I'm going to take this person here. Sorry, yeah.
Thanks. You mentioned that plant spacing in the polycultures is really important.
Yeah.
You use a specific spacing
Yeah.
technique? I missed what that was.
It's called the French intensive method.
French intensive.
Yeah, so Alan Chadwick. Alan Chadwick, he was a British bloke, but he moved to California and he built this biodynamic garden using it. I don't know if it's a very old technique, but Alan Chadwick was the one that like really pushed the French intensive method, like really tight packed vegetable plantings basically. Yeah. I think there's another name for it now because we like to name everything. I think it's called bio-intensive farming or something like that. I think that's another term for it now as well. Yeah.
And there's a website where you can just go in and add whatever plant you're planting and it will tell you exactly the space.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
Potatoes works in food forests.
We were going to do it this year actually, but we needed the potatoes. We've never tried potatoes in the food forest. There was a chap who came on our agroforestry workshop who did do potatoes in food forest, and he said he just put a sheet of cardboard down, put the potatoes on top, and then chucked a load of hay on top of it basically. We grow our potatoes like roof stout, so we don't ridge with soil, we ridge with hay. And so every time the potatoes come up, we add another layer of hay, they come up, we add another layer of hay, and we do it 3 times, and that's how we grow ours.
Do you find that other plants will grow around the potatoes?
Because we have to use thick hay mulches, no, because we're always chucking hay mulch. Like docks and stuff grow in amongst there. We let the docks and stuff grow in there. We have got a polyculture trial this year, which is potatoes and broad beans that we're going to try. So it's going to be potatoes with a row of broad beans, and we're going to see if we can diversify that a bit more, basically. Weeds are the polyculture with potatoes, basically. That's what we use, pretty much, yeah.
It's the hay you use growing on the farm as well.
Yeah, it's from our meadows. Yeah.
Can I ask about winter?
Yeah,
And then is that more, you've mentioned perennials, is that,
that's when the perennials come in, yeah.
and they can deal with it sort of like
They just don't mind. You know, last year when we had, like this time last year, we were entering a drought basically. A cow parsley was flowering. Perennials were fine, didn't need anything. This year, high wind and rain, perennials are fine. And they're just a lot more resilient to climate change. They're a lot more resilient to like sudden weather changes than the annuals are.
so like the
Perennial
perennial kales.
kales, so we're not growing annual kale really this year. We're just going to use perennial kales. We'll use annual kales to get diversity of leaf. But we're going to rely far more on the perennial kales this year to give us our needs. I mean, we're picking only perennial kales now as part of our Sunday greens in our restaurant and stuff.
You have to get them going kind of much earlier so they can cope with it.
We get them in now, and then by winter they're like that big. Yeah, you can use them as windbreaks as well. They get pretty beastie. What we're doing now is we're sowing a lot more of the potager kales. Which have a lot more leaf diversity. Some of them aren't perennial, you have to kind of like select them out. But if you sow a lot of perennial kales, you may get like 40% that are perennial, but a lot of them have like curly leaves and red leaves. And so we're sowing a lot more to try to create a more diversity other than just Daunton Dean and Michigan kale. So that's that. We've got a big breeding program that we're doing this year with them as well. Yeah. Cool, yeah?
Agroforestry, you said it's really key to
Yeah.
fertility, and if you had the ability, you just put a load of trees in the dairy next door
Yeah.
to build fertility. Can you just explain, like briefly, if possible, how agroforestry builds fertility?
Yeah, so my understanding with it when I wanted to do it was that nature always wants to revert back to a forest. That's what it is. Gardening is really stopping a forest forming again. I mean, that's fundamentally what we're trying to do here. And so nature is, nature's going to a forest. Forest is our fertility builder. That's what it is. The most fertile land you'll find is in forest, basically. It's not so much, I mean, I think we have to step away from this idea of fertility as well, actually, to be honest. It's soil biodiversity is what we're focusing on, to be honest. And trees are the best way at doing that. So trees will build fungal levels. They'll create like stable soil populations because you're not ploughing it and ripping it out and changing it all the time. You get so much carbon sequestration because the leaves are photosynthesizing and they're locking the carbon into the ground. And because they're perennial, they're going to keep that carbon in the ground. And also you're getting leaf litter as well, which is also building habitat and fertility at the same time. And what these perennial roots do, because agroforestry is just a perennial system as well, is they can go, meters and meters and meters and link to each other, and like a fiber optic cable, they're carrying all of the soil microbes that we want to create through the soil as well. So especially fungi, and I think the largest living organism we've ever found on the planet is one massive fungi, basically, connection. That's how they do it, pretty much.
So there's no point at which it will rob fertility.
I mean, some people say willows take moisture, but we prune the willows hard back, that they never really have such a head start to do that. The raised beds are a key part of it as well, because the annuals have such tiny root systems, they sit above the root layer that we create in our raised beds as well. If you go on a flat level, what usually happens is they spade the agroforestry systems. So they'll run a spade plough down the edge of an agroforestry system and just chop the edge of the roots off to stop them creeping in. So that's all you have to do, really. Again, we've never seen it. I mean, our agroforestry is only 5 years old, so maybe in time we will. But if anything, it's just improved the soil around the vegetables, to be honest. And that's what we found.
I was wondering whether the raised beds were kind of key to that, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't do it for that reason to begin with, but maybe by coincidence, that's what's happened. I would never grow on ground level again. I'll always grow in raised beds, to be honest, because it's better on my back as well, to be honest. But we've never seen them rob anything. We've just seen plants do better around them. Give me 100 years, or give the next person 100 years, and they may be shouting at me. But eventually, the idea is that the farm will transition into one that relies on the forestry. So the annuals are only here, hopefully, for 20, 30 years, and then people will be picking walnuts and hazelnuts and cob nuts by the time the trees get to a size that maybe they start to impact the area. But now, as it's growing, the trees are just purely supporting the vegetables, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, we have, poplar is a big pioneer tree that we use on the farm because it's so easy from hardwood cuttings. We usually find a root that goes from here to the end of that table, still in the vegetable bed, and the vegetables are growing quite happily above those roots. So that's another thing, really. But we haven't seen any examples of it, to be honest. Yeah. Cool, Winnie.
So when you were starting the garden, did you use the excavator for preparing the...
Yep, so there's, you'll see on the tour this afternoon, we've got a pond and a swale system. And so we had to so all of the runoff from the glass house, the vehicle shed, the potting shed, that goes into a water system, which then goes into the pond and a reed bed system. So we had to excavate that area to do that. So we had a lot of dumpers and diggers here. Down the bottom of the farm to where that wind turbine is, or actually, no, sorry, before that wind turbine, we dug a drainage rill as well. So we had a digger down there. But that was about it. But the farm previously was tractors spraying slurry every 2 weeks. So the farm itself, before we took it on, was massive tractors every 2 weeks spraying slurry, basically. So it was very compacted when we started. The food forest here, I might as well have planted it in the Gobi Desert, to be honest, because that's what it felt like when we planted. The soil was like a rock when we put the trees in, basically. I'm going to introduce you to Russell, and then we're going to start the day with IMO. Russell is basically the number 2 on the farms, my senior grower. So one of the first things that me and Russell wanted to do was make it as efficient as possible. So Russell built this table for all our inoculants and sprays. One side is pans, manuals, scales, everything like that. The other side is where all the ferments and solutions go. They've all fallen down because the magnets have got weaker, but there's usually...
it's too windy.
Yeah, it's too windy.
I've had to put them in the book.
There's dilutions where the magnets are. So everyone on the farm, if it's not Russell, knows exactly where everything is. So if I'm like, right, go spray that bed for me, they know exactly to come here, where it is, where the scales are, the dilution, and they can go out and spray it. And that's something we've worked a lot on to make it efficient for a farming system, basically. And like I said in the room, the 2 days as well is to pick Russell's brains about all the kind of nuances that he's kind of like figured out and stuff like that as well. Cool. So today we're going to be spending a lot of day on IMO. IMO is the one thing that we love more than anything, basically. IMO, so this is all based on the idea of KNF, Korean Natural Farming, created by a chap called Master Cho, who unfortunately passed away last year, but I love it. I think it's been one of the reasons we've been able to take the land from a dairy pasture into something that can finally grow some food. When I first came here, every local farmer and villager told us, you can't grow food here, it's impossible. We've kind of proved that wrong now, and we used it to take from very conventional farming depleted land into something that we could actually start to grow trees, meadows, vegetables, absolute everything on. But I will say now, IMO is 90% of what does that. IMO is the fundamental foundation stone of everything you're going to learn today. This is what you build on. So the one thing that you really want to get down is the IMO. So IMO stands for... Yeah, it stands for, I'm really bad at thinking that everyone knows what they stand for, so please raise your hand when I'm rattling these off. So IMO stands for Indigenous Microorganisms, and what we're trying to do is capture the microbes to our area. Because microbes are so massively diverse, you know, an awful dystopian thing I heard a few years ago was the only way we're going to figure out about microbes is using AI. It's so incredibly complicated, it varies. Microbes at one end of the bed will be completely different to the ones at the other bed. They'd almost be like traveling the world going to different countries. And so they are massively diverse. Like Manasoba Fukuoka, I see myself as a farmer. I'm a natural farmer. The science of microscopes are great. I have a microscope, I look at it and I wonder what the hell is going on. I use my sight, taste, sound, and my feeling. So everything does release an energy, and if it feels good, I find it generally is good, and so that's what we utilize a lot of this on. And since we've done this, the farm has just got healthier, it feels better, things get bigger and everything like that. But IMO is the most important thing as part of our kind of like inoculating system. So when we collect IMO, we want to collect it as local as possible. For us, there's not much space you can collect from, basically, because you leave the farm, you're either entering a pine plantation or a dairy field. And so we've had some little scraps of hedgerow here and there that have never been touched that Russell's collected from. We have a 5-acre woodland that's basically so wet and rocky the tractors couldn't get there, so we're quite lucky to have that. So Russell's collected from there, so we're lucky to have that. But in the book, what it would say, you're looking to collect something within 20 miles of your farm, basically. But closer the better, because as close as you get it, the more accustomed it's going to be to the land that you're trying to grow it in. And this is what it is. Anything you buy, mycorrhizal powders or anything like that, they're made in a lab, they come from I don't know where, you get sent in the post, you open it up, 99.9% of them probably just die off the minute you open the packet. This is about growing and creating something that's used to your landscape. It knows what your weather patterns are like, it knows what your soil is like, it knows all the different kind of nuances of your landscape, and that's what we're trying to create. We use this on the soil, we make compost tea, we use it in potting mix if we have enough, we use it in everything to inoculate. We cover garlic cloves in it, so that when we plant the garlic cloves, we're just inoculating the ground as we're doing that. And like I said, by putting it in our potting mix, when we plant our soil blocks, we're also inoculating the ground at the same time. So we use it for everything. I will say this, it's a little bit tricky to get going, just persevere through it as much as possible. Because once you get it down and you know how to do it, you'll just have constant IMOs coming in, basically. So we're going to go through every process. There's 4 processes, IMO 1 to 4. We're going to cover every single one today. Because it's a 2-day course now, we're actually going to take you to how we locate it in a tree, show you how we protect it from the elements. Because IMO boxes, we don't want rain and wind to get into them, so there's a bit of a protection for them as well. But what we're going to start with is IMO 1. So this is IMO 1. IMO 1 is filling the box, finding a location to place it, placing it and capturing those microbes to bring back. So first off, you need an IMO box. So you can make these. You basically you have to use an untreated wood because you don't want the microbes to die from something treated. So we got all of this oak from the builder's offcuts, basically. So this is untreated oak. We create the box. Russell's written the dimensions of what he likes on the boxes, so you're more than welcome to copy that. This is just a really good depth for a successful IMO collection. You then want to cut holes and slits into it so that the microbes can get through the box into your carbohydrate that you're going to place in the center, basically. Something that we've learned, you need a wire mesh to stop mice getting in it and cats and whatever's roaming around, I guess. And then you also want a mesh top on it, because once the box is in the woods, we don't want any kind of like leaf material getting in or any outside material getting in, contaminating the box. So these work really well. So we've got a bit of EnviroMesh to stop leaf debris getting in, and then we have a metal cage on top to stop the kind of mice. We've tried everything. The mice will chew for everything. You need metal because they will just chew through the EnviroMesh fleece and get into the box.
Like our very first one was little wicker baskets. Looked lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll just chew through.
We've had many failures.
So what we need to put in the box is a carbohydrate. So carbohydrate is full of all the sugars that the microbes want to eat. The absolute best is white rice. Brown rice is a bit too hard, so the microbes struggle to get through it. White rice is so easy for them to consume, it's just the most successful. Me and Russell want to do trials. There are a lot of people using things like quinoa, things that they can grow on their farm. Me and Russell just haven't had any time to test it out yet, basically. Rice is just the best carbohydrate for a guaranteed IMO collection. If you start to use things like quinoas and oats, there's just a higher risk it could fail until you figure it out. Rice is just kind of like the first stage when you're learning it. Rice is just more of a guarantee in doing it. But it has to be a white rice because it's a lot more kind of, it hasn't got the brown kind of husk for the microbes to chew through.
Doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, some people say jasmine because it breaks up the outside core a little quicker. But, I mean, obviously, the carbon footprint, but that amount of rice will probably give me 150 kilos of material. So it's a very small carbon footprint compared to what it can go out. So that, you know, you can't, you know, you don't have to. It's, you know, it's better because you don't know what chemicals are on there. So if you're wanting stuff to eat it and it's got chemicals, you might not get a good bloom. You know, so
I mean, the reason is that the farm, as we learned in the talk, the farm follows the principle that the farm has to provide its needs. So we have to use rice until we get it going, but the goal is one day, as soon as me and Russell get any time, is that we want to transition into another carb. But we're going to go through like 20 boxes until we figure it out, to be honest. Rice is just that guarantee every single time. Yeah. So what you want to do with the rice, so what you can also do, which we'll learn tomorrow, is if Russell is making IMO, he can wash the rice and use the rice wash water to make LAB at the same time as well. So you're going to learn LAB tomorrow, but we basically use rice to make the LAB. So generally when you're making the IMO, you can do 2 for 1. So you can wash your rice, take the liquid, make your LAB, and then use the rice to then make an IMO at the same time. So you can do 2 for 1 as well. So when you do the rice, you have to cook it, and you have to cook it al dente. And that's the best way I can describe it. It's got to be crunchy in the middle, soft on the outside. If you cook it too much, it will rot in the box, and it will just stink. If you don't cook it enough, the microbes won't be able to penetrate it and eat it. So there's loads of different ratios. One ratio we've done is for every cup of rice, you use 2 cups of water. I don't know how you cook your rice. I don't know if you hard boil it on 9 on your hob flat out, but generally that's the ratio, but you have to figure it out. But what you want is crunchy in the middle and soft on the outside. So Russell's got a little bit to feel and chew in your teeth if you want, like that.
yeah, that's been cooked hygienically.
Yeah, not in rainwater like we usually do. And that's what we're looking for. But like I said, too wet, it will rot in the box. Not enough, the microbes can't penetrate that soft layer to get in there and eat it, basically.
And don't worry too much about the ratio of water to rice, because I just do it by feel.
Some people use rice cookers, some people use hobs. It depends how you cook your rice.
And normally when you cook rice, you don't stir it. I would recommend you stir it because the bottom will cook quicker than the top. So that's another tip.
Russell, once he cooks it, likes to dry it a little bit. But Russell, I have found if you can put it in the fridge overnight, is it overnight? And then that's quite good for drying
just
it out.
lay it out flat on a tray on grease-proof, something like that. Let the air get to it and dry it, because again, you don't want to put it out wet. The thing I would also do is once it's cooked, cool it straight away. Now, if you want to use rainwater, make sure you've got a watering can to rinse it. You can put tap water, but remember the chlorine has changed in our water systems because of the complaints about the quality of the water. So it actually is stronger and lasts longer, where we used to be able to put stuff out for 24 hours, evaporate, it takes longer. So just be mindful of that. But I would say probably cook it with normal water so you get to know, because obviously, I mean, you're still boiling it, it's not going to kill you. But obviously our rainwater goes through a UV filter anyhow, so it's slightly safer. But just feel, you'll get the feel of it. But what I would say to you, we've done big boxes, because Josh is a great one for doing big things. Yeah. It doesn't work. So that size there just is easy to bury, to work with, and I made all the boxes the same size, which I'll show you a process which makes you a lot easier, because what we used to have to do, once we've done that, we go and place it. When we harvest it, we used to take a bucket with scales, sugar, so we made it hopefully simpler. But going back to the rice, lay it out, just let it air dry. I mean, you can put it outside, that's what I do on the big trays, and then you just move it around a couple of times, and then it's ready to go the next day. If you put it in the fridge, don't seal it, because it'll just sweat again, okay? That just minimises it rotting.
It's the cooking of the rice why 99% of IMO boxes fail. That's the big thing, yeah.
Do you think to seal it in the fridge?
Don't seal it because it sweats and hydrates, yeah.
Just leave it.
But it's,
You can leave it on the tray until the next day, whenever you're going to do it. But yeah, don't seal it, because I've done it before and I don't know. It's just gone a bit.
but it's the cooking of the rice is the thing that you have to learn. Like that, you know, I can say, oh, the boxes fail and stuff like that, but all the time the problem is that people have cooked the rice too much. It's got wet and soft, and when they put it outside, it basically just rots in the box. So really, what I'm saying is, get the al dente rice cooked down that you recognise what it is, and then once you figure that out, the boxes are just nice and easy. Because it's quite a long process. People are, oh, where did I fail here? But like I said, it's usually the rice cook is where people have cooked it too much is usually the problem. So then once Russell has cooked the rice, he then pops it in the box. And like I said, for efficiency for everyone, he writes the dimensions of the box, how much he fills it up by. What Russell does now is, well, I'll let Russell explain, but he does this paper situation to get it out quicker as well.
So basically what I've learned, because you end up putting rice in there, because you have to take the same amount of sugar with you when you harvest it. So basically when you go and it's ready, you have 20 minutes. So if you're further away than 20 minutes from your farm or garden, you've got to do it there. Okay, so what I found is just line your box once you made it, cook your rice, and what you'll play around with, I did work it out once, how much raw rice I need for the box, per box. But what I do with the grease proof is about a good third. If I just show you, I'll put that in the bottom, I'll probably put a little bit more in there, just quickly like that. These holes are about 8 mil, by the way. You can do slits. I can't turn it over now. That one I've got slits, but
Yeah,
some of them
with the
I
holes and slits, you don't want things getting in as well. So it's as small as possible, so something can't crawl in through the hole and
The
gobble your
reason
rice.
for the grease proof is now I can take that out, weigh it, and it should be 500, which is nearly right. So I work mine out at 500 grams. So I know I need to take 550 grams. You're going, why am I going over? Because I'll show you that little 50 grams you'll need later. So yeah, so that's your rice. So now you know every time you cook it, that's how much. So if you want to work out how much to get 500 grams of raw rice, you know, you can do. But that's the way, because I do so many, I can do that. Then I'll put it in the box. So the grease proof is literally just so you can take it in and out. So on that note, fly screen. I've tried t-shirts, old t-shirts and things. It holds moisture if it does get damp. So these are offcuts of old Enviromesh, anything like that. Sorry about the tape, but health and safety, there were sharp edges, so we had to put tape on it. So that's your box, ready to go. As you can see, I've got enough, so I'm just going to quickly do.
So IMO generally we make in the winter because we have the time to do it. That's what we try to do. But when we do IMO, what we're also doing is we're collecting as much biodiversity got a bird in my head. We're collecting as much diversity as possible. So Russell will make as many boxes as he makes. And when we go to put the IMO boxes out, we're putting them across a broad spectrum of different habitats, basically. So generally, we always want to put an IMO box in a woodland. We want to put it somewhere that hasn't been disturbed by people for a long, long time. So trees, forests, hedgerows are really good for that. We're not going to put it in a pine plantation because we don't want to capture anything from a pine plantation. What we're looking for is like an ancient forest as close to our land as possible, or a really old hedgerow that's been there for so long that it's got a lovely kind of like long generational microbial connection. Microbes go through, like, again, 20 minutes, 10 minutes generation. So if you have a forest that hasn't been touched or dug for hundreds, if not thousands of years, imagine the genetic diversity in that soil, basically. And that's what we're trying to capture. But Russell could put 5 boxes out, 10 boxes out. And so when Russell's putting boxes out, he'll go one on top of a hill, one down low, one under an oak, one under a shrub. He'll look for as much diversity as possible because that's what we're collecting with IMO as well. We're collecting the characteristic of the area as much as possible. And you'll see why we do that, because when we bring it back, so Russell's got IMO box under oak, IMO box in hedgerow, so on and so on. Russell will store those boxes, and when we come to do IMO 3, which is when we make it into a pile to use on the farm, he's putting all of that diversity into that pile. So you can imagine how diverse it is by the end. So we're always looking to put as many boxes that we can out at any time across different locations in the area. Put them in an area that you're going to walk to as well. Like, don't put one 10 miles away on one farm unless you're willing to drive there and you want to. They're all within a vicinity so that when we come to collect it, we're not wasting time by zigzagging. Another thing, get good at your mental mapping. So when you lay it out, identify markers to remind you where the box is as well, because it can happen, you go and you go, where did I put this box? I've completely forgotten. The IMO takes about, it depends on the temperature. In winter, it can take up to 2 weeks. Winter's harder because we have the risk of rain and water getting into it, but it takes about 2 weeks. In the height of summer, when it's nice and hot, it's about 5 to 7 days you can get an IMO collection, basically. But basically what we do is, yeah, should we say anything? I don't know. I will say this. Curiosity kills the cat with this. Once the box is out, you cannot go, oh, I wonder how it's doing. Has it gone white and fuzzy? The minute you open up, UV gets in and kills it, basically. You have to be so disciplined. We've done it, we've looked in it, and we've ruined it. So what we generally do is you put your hand under the box, and it'll be hot and warm. If it's nice and hot, you pull your hand out, it's ready to go. If it's like lukewarm, then you know in a couple of days I'm going to check it again.
Or it could have gone over. So this is your friend, an old tea-towel towel, because literally you can cover it and look. Yeah. Okay, so that comes in handy both for checking and when you harvest, because obviously the whole period you've got to keep it as much UV out as possible.
But again, IMO comes through practice. It really does. I guarantee the first box will go horribly wrong. It always does. It's the second one and then the third one, and then by the fourth or the second, if you're lucky, it's nice and you just know how it works. And so you may find your land after 5 days, that's when I'm roughly getting my IMOs. So you know day 4, I've got to check it because it takes about 5 days for IMO, and then you can work off that basically. So we know in summer, was it 5 to 7 when it's hot, and it's about 2 weeks in winter. So Russell will go, 5 days I'm going to check it and see and make my decision. Then in winter, about 11 days I'll check it and see and go off from there basically. Frost doesn't kill it, you're just collecting different microbes. So
basically, because I'll show you over the other side, we protect it from as much elements as you can. And you imagine, so we're trying to put it at the level of the duff. Does everyone know what duff is? So you've got the hard forest floor, you've got the green leaves, the bit in the middle of the mycelium is basically called duff. So basically we're trying to curate them to sit just in the touch of the duff, and then the material we'll put over to protect them. So that'd be like branches that are falling down naturally. So you're just trying to, everything we're trying to do is naturally as possible, but we're tweaking it obviously for our own benefits. So, one thing we're trying hard is obviously our climates are changing, so it's getting a lot wetter, like quick wets. So trial a wet area near a stream, because that bacteria and microbes will learn to survive in those wetter conditions, okay? Especially if it's a place that floods goes down, because they have learnt, and that will mimic what weather we're having at the minute. We're having really wet periods and then dry periods and wet periods, so they will learn. And they will teach our own bacterium microbes, because they want to survive, it's the same as all of us. So they do talk to each other. And learn. And again, because of the winds and drier, try on top of a hill. If there's a couple of trees on top of a hill, trial there. You might not get a massive bloom, but if you've got something from it, you've got that diversity that they will live, because you just want to keep your soil alive through the whole season. For wet winters, hot springs, hot summers. So the more diversity you can collect, the better of arsenal you've got in your soil.
We're in annuals, we'll always do IMO because the annuals always take. But with our agroforestry now, so when we do the IMO, so we collect all the IMO. So a big part of the IMO on this farm has been that this land hasn't been a forest for decades, if not hundreds of years, to be honest. And so our soil completely forgot how to be a forest again, because it's been an annual pasture for years and years and years. It's gone through the ringer, basically. And so a big job of the IMO in the beginning was that we want our land to become a forest again. And so we collect from a forest, we bring the microbes from the forest up. They'll teach our microbes again to hopefully be a forest. And when we plant our agroforestry, the trees will connect better and send out the messages better, basically. To be honest, we're talking about it quite a lot now. We'll go into it more tomorrow, but the idea is maybe we just add IMO to the agroforestry systems now and allow the agroforestry systems to take the IMO across the farm, because the trees are doing so much work in making the soil as diverse as possible now. But we wanted the IMO to get it going. But at the moment, as it stands, garlic cloves and all potting mix, if we have it, gets IMO, so we're already doing it anyway. And then every bed will get a scattering of IMO once it's reset, and then weed mulch will go on top of that IMO, and that's how we currently do it, basically. In perennial systems, we'll just focus it on agroforestry, definitely, but in annuals, we're still doing it. But to be honest, I think we're reaching that point now. We probably only have to start focusing on the agroforestry, and they'll send everything out for us, basically, and keep it alive as well. Because they also want perennial food sources. The problem with annuals is we rip all the roots out for winter. We need roots 12 months of the year, always active, so they have something to latch onto, and the plants can regulate sugars and feeds to keep them fed, and that's what we're trying to do. But Russell's right in the sense that, yeah, we're collecting diversity. So if you have flooding land in winter now, try to get some IMO boxes near a wet area. That's the hardest one. I will get it, like that is the hardest one. But that's what you want to do. And if you were getting hotter and drier, try to collect an IMO box in an area that you know gets quite dry and hot, because you're capturing the characteristic of that space, and we're going to make that diversity together, and then that will teach our land how to adapt with everything that's coming in, basically, as much as possible.
So I was just going to say, on your question, because traditional gardeners, we take all the material away, okay? So you're taking the food for that bacteria and microbes away. So if we clear the ground, we have to keep inoculating, because there's nothing for them to survive. So by cut and drop like we do, you'll constantly feed them. Once they've got food, they multiply, multiply, multiply. So it depends on how you farm. If you do clear your beds completely and you rotivate or whatever, yeah, you need to do it every year, because you're diminishing all of those.
Russell's right in that, and a lot of this is also, we knew we didn't want to be a compost system. Like from day one, we knew we didn't want to be a compost system. So a lot of people supplement it by using compost. They make a compost, they put it on the bed. The compost has all of that. But what we want, because we're a natural farm, we want kind of more, I don't know how you want to describe it, more like native microfauna, I guess. We don't want thermophilic, high pressure turned compost heaps. Like all compost heaps should go for a year of maturation to make it the best it can be, to be honest. A lot of it doesn't. And we know that council compost basically gets cooked alive, turned over, and it's out of the gate in 6 weeks. So we definitely don't want that. And so a lot of this was a way for us to supplement compost. And so the IMO is our inoculant that a really good compost would give us. The only difference is that a lot of us don't have time to make really good compost. That's the problem. And so that's what the IMO does. But it's collecting it from a kind of natural process in a forest rather than a human-made process of making it, basically. There are two ways as well. So Master Cho created this because he didn't like the fact in Asia or Korea, where he created, they were taking from the forest, they were taking leaf litter, they were taking twigs and sticks. So this is about that you don't have to do that. There'll be one that we do this afternoon, which is the JMS, where how you do this in a barrel really quickly. That's about taking something and putting it in the barrel. So this IMO system is also, you're not taking anything from the forest. You're not taking leaves out or sticks that are habitat and food. You're literally capturing it and then taking it out, basically, as well. So that was like a big important thing for Master Cho when he did that as well. Brilliant. You got any more on that?
No, just a quick one. I mean, you look at the forest floor, we don't send people in midwinter and rake all the leaves out. You know, yeah, that's just...
So, and Russell's also right, again, like from the talk, the chop and drop, the weeds, the polyculture, the agroforestry, they're all methods for us to give the food source for the IMO and the other microbes constant food source for the year as well. So that's a really important part of it as well. Yeah.
Is the important thing there the fact that it's a third of the box?
Yeah, no, I mean, if you get, that's what I would say, about a third of the box or just under. It's too thick, it gets too rotty. You know, it's a very fine note. Before, you know, we used to do it, as you saw, the holes at the halfway, and it was just too, the bottom was going rotten because they wanted the airflow. And that's the difference as well, we're not compacting it down. You need a little bit of airflow for the microbes to go into.
And the reason you weighed it was just to replicate that amount in the other
Yeah,
box.
you'll get to know on your boxes how to fill it. You saw me do the second one, I just tipped it in because I know that's roughly 500 grams. And what I was going to show next is then I weigh 550 grams because I know that's enough sugar for that box when I harvest it, which we will do later. So I was just going to quickly show you that. I'll go back to it when we actually do. God sends good wishes that my box.
But Russell, so that stops wastage, because you may overcook the rice and be like, oh no, I've made too much. And also if Russell's not here, the guys know 500 grams of rice, weigh it, cook, box, done. It cuts out the need for seasonal grows, for example, going, oh, is it that much? Is it this much? And yeah, we filled these boxes up before. The center always rots out. Like, that's what happens. It gets too wet in the center. So that's just the level we've done. So it just makes it a lot more streamlined for everyone. Because the problem is we rely too much on Russell, and we have to like share it out to amongst everyone as well. So if Russell's not here, someone can just basically go, yeah, 500, cook, done. And we're not chucking loads of rice out as well because we've got too much or too little as well. We've got to cook it again. Brilliant. So we're going to go out. We're going to show you how we place the box in the woods, using like the covers, how we protect it, how we check for it underneath. I will say, don't do it near a footpath because people look at you a bit weird. That we used to do in other places. So just think about like areas that you're going to do, but we're going to go out and we're going to show you what we look for when we place the box out and how we place it out, basically. We're in our woods now. Not to get like whimsical about it. Like a lot of the IMO collection as well is how the space feels to you. I think is really important as well. And I will say this as a manager, again, like I said, like natural farming is about us just as much as it is about the crops. The IMO is a lovely, beautiful, mindful experience as well. You know, I love the fact that Russell and the guys go out there, they lay boxes, they grow it, they bring it back, they grow it, and all that work gets used on the farm. And it does make you a better grower because you require, like I was saying, your sight, your hearing. So I can hear birds, I can hear life. I'm looking at the trees and the health of the trees. I'm feeling what the space feels like. Does it smell like chemicals and horrible? I don't really want to put a box here, basically. Or does it feel really nice? And I definitely want to capture this as well. So that is a big part of it. So imagine you come into the woods, you're looking around, and what you're looking for is, again, like the health of the ecosystem as well. So we always try to look for like a really healthy oak tree or a really healthy ash tree, or not ash anymore, sorry, but beech or something like that, like a big native deciduous tree. We don't generally want to capture from conifers, but in the world of diversity, if there's one in a forest, there's scope to capture it as well, but we don't want to go to a pine plantation or anything like that. So we want to go to a nice, pardon?
Well, it's a monoculture.
It's a monoculture plantation.
It's very shady. I mean, it's worth collecting, but you know, it's dry. You know, you're going to get some.
Also, creates a very unnatural soil system. It creates something called podzoling. So, like all the conifers over decades acidify the ground and they kill it. And you can see when you go to a conifer plantation, there's nothing growing and it's very sterile. Well, again, like I said, diversity. We want to collect from a diverse area as possible. So we've walked into the woods, we've seen the space, we like this, we've looked at the ground, there's some lovely leaf litter and logs, and we know, yeah, this is exactly where we want to capture our box, basically. And so once Russell's kind of found the spot he wants to capture from, he'll then go out and put the box. What's really important about the box, we don't want rain to get into it and we don't want wind to get into it. These make absolutely brilliant IMO lids, the old, you know, the kind of like 20 litre whatever pots cut in half. Does start to look a bit weird in the woods, so that's what I mean. Like, go away from a footpath because people wonder what you're doing, especially when you're standing like that. But and so yeah, we have to protect it from the rain and we have to protect it from the wind as well. That's like a big part of IMO because it'll start to rot basically if we get the water in there.
So this is going to be a little bit hard because this is a burn, which is a stone wall with slightly soil. So if you can imagine in the woods, you're going to have that layer, as I said, you're going to push that top layer back to get to the duff. Okay, and that's where you would sit the bottom of your box. So you're not bearing it, you're just putting it enough. So you've got to imagine this is a really good woods. Yeah.
So what Ross was saying, like you've got that layer of like leaf and twig. We call them like little IMO islands. You like squidge it away, get back to the forest floor where all the roots are, place your box on top of that. Don't put it on top of a root that it's rocking because it needs to be on surface to the floor. Place it on the floor, and then Russ will he'll show you, he'll move it all around basically.
So we quickly come over this area. We were going to do it in there, but we couldn't get everyone in. So imagine this area. There's a little nugget in the tree. Obviously there's moss growing there, so there's activity. The soil's moist as well. You don't want to really put it in a really dry area because obviously there's not going to be a lot growing in there. Because there's nothing worse going there and just having a dry box when you go back, nothing, because that will disappoint you. But one thing I will say to you, just on the back of what Josh said, you will feel when it's a good place. I mean, we were rushing at the beginning of this journey and I was putting boxes out willy-nilly. And a lot of the places, you just go, oh yeah, I'll put it there. No, it doesn't. But I've learned, you really do. You walk around and you'll feel it. I know it sounds silly, but you will. And once you get a good box, you will find out, not spiritually, but do you know what I mean? You will know what's good. You can feel what's good. You know, we have a survival instinct of survival. So we will know where a good soil is to plant crops, where to harvest from. Anyhow, that's in our DNA. So we're just utilising that. So I keep hold of the tea towel because we don't want a lot of debris on top. Even though we've got that fine mesh, bits will still go in, so it's more chance of contamination. Okay, so I found this little nugget. I'm going to put them in here. If you imagine, I've dug down to the duff. Oh, so artificial, sorry. It's completely against my nature. But so what I have done is I've collected a load of logs from the woods just to show you, but you can also do that. So around the box, that one's a bit proud, but you can also then put mycelium covered logs around it and then sit the cover on. Okay, which I'll do now. They're a bit bigger than I really wanted, but
we call it an IMO nest, is basically what we make. And so the box, once Russell's placed it on the ground, and he's got like the leaf litter, he's found some logs with mycelium in, he's building up, you'll basically just roughly see the top of the box almost sitting proud, and then the whole side of the box he kind of like builds around it, makes this kind of like lovely nest around the box itself.
So obviously the important is don't block it in so much that you cannot then get your hand in to try it. Okay, which is I've done very first. So I know there's a little nook there that I can put my hand through. So what I'm saying is you don't have to keep taking the cover off, which is more chance of material falling in because the tea towel won't be there, to get your hand in. But you can put a couple of logs in front and then you just know you have to remove that log to get your hand underneath, okay?
It wants to be on the soil, like, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it needs to be about that deep. So I'm going to say you'll clear off that top green area that's not a lot of activity to the sort of soil level. You know, you don't have to dig down deep, but just enough. So it's like basically half the depth of the rice in the soil. And then you can slowly build up just around the edges, then put your logs and then put your lid on.
The more surface area the box is sitting on, the more surface area you have for capture, basically. So you want it on the ground, so the box is.
You know, you've got to remember this rice is like having a McDonald's, Red Bull, everything all in one. You know, that's why it is so good with the carbohydrates. It's not natural. You know, the most they'll probably get is a pigeon drop and a load of grain in its crop. So this is why they get so excited about it.
So if you had the soil floor, you'd clear this area, for example, and then you'd place the box on the flat surface, and like Russell's doing now, you'd build the IMO nest around it, basically, from that, pretty much.
Then my cover. So obviously you've got one entrance. This will be your entrance to put your hand in. Don't do it the other way because it gets in the way. So don't put it facing the prevailing winds and rain because obviously that's your biggest opening. Okay. Some people do put extra covers over polythene. I think it's a bit artificial. But if you are having trouble with that, you know, feel free to use a bit of polythene over the top, but just be careful, it will sweat. that's what we're trying not to. Again, the rice, you know, it's a very big thing like that. So
it's also about airflow. Like you still want it to breathe because we're trying to capture living things here. So you don't want to like then wrap it in plastic to protect it and then basically cut the airflow off as well.
So that's the cover over it. One thing I have learnt with rodents, they don't like gorse. Nor do I, but it's trying to use natural material. Brash or gorse is good for deterrent, but bracken, ferns, we haven't got a lot here, but down in the woods we've got loads. They're really good as a natural roof to lay over. I'm afraid I haven't got masses of them. You'd make a good covering over it and then have them draping over the front. Again, you're using a natural material that's growing there, so it's going to have microbes on it already on the leaves. So you're just utilising everything. You would have it draping over the top. That would be enough for me to cover, so there's no wind getting in. Any rain will just run off the front leaves. Okay, is that sort of...
Generally, like, it's not always, and who really knows, but again, the book will say, like, you know, put it the south side of the tree to get them. I don't know where I'm standing in the forest where I'm there, so...
This one is bury this one a little bit deeper because I can get to the soil.
But again, really important, if you're in a public wood and someone sees that, they will just rip that to pieces to look what it is as well. So it is good to hide them and then remember where you've hidden them as well. Right? So that is...
Also, obviously, just to stop.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, my son would love to pull that to pieces.
And again, just using a natural barrier, the gorse, that's what was meaning, where they would naturally go in as well. It just, you know, we don't, with those boxes, I've never had any problem with anything, you know, but you might have badgers that might want to flip the box over. Yeah, but we haven't had that problem. But what I'm saying, if you put a load of gorse around it, they're not going to...
Yeah, I found berberis keeps them
Yeah. Anything prickly. You know, that's just another way of keeping any rodents, right? Even dogs, you know, we've had it before. You know, we've been walking up to our, you've been thinking, yeah, the path's there, there's a lovely tree, and you see a cocker spaniel go up and go, oh, great cheese. Anyhow, but that's by the here.
It's one of the reasons why we put out more than one box, that if, again, one fails, someone disturbs it or whatever, you've got hopefully 4 more or 3 more or 2 more that you may get one as well. So putting more out does increase your chance that at least you'll capture 1. And sometimes that happens. You can put 5 out and you only get 1, or you put 5 out, you get 5. It's just kind of how it is, really. You may put 5 out and not get any, but like I said, IMO is the fundamental pillar that the whole kind of like thing rests on, like fertility, inoculation and everything. And it's what we've put a lot of time into to get it. And Russ can go out now and you know, pretty much get at least 1 box or 2 or 3 every single time now. But like I said, it's always the rice cooking that kind of like is the problem, basically.
Believe me, I still get failures. It's not always guaranteed. No matter how many times you do it, you still get failures. But don't give up. I don't know if anyone walks past. This is what I mean about the duff layer. This is a little bit more compact than you would in the woods. But I've just cleared down, so you've got rid of that top layer of dry and green stuff. And then literally... the other thing is we haven't done yet, we really want to try in a meadow, because they're obviously a very open area. So that's once our meadows are set, we want to do that. So, you know, experiment, you know, but don't experiment too much at the beginning. Just try and do it, the basics really well. And you know, my first 2, 3 were failures, and it was like, I keep going, and as soon as you get one, it's like...
Yeah, so many people do this once and it doesn't work and they don't try again. I really like, just keep doing it and keep doing it. Eventually, once you figure it out, it's a lot easier. And when you finally get one, there is nothing quite like it. To be honest, Russell used to collect the first IMOs from here because we just had nothing, we had nothing around us to do anything with, basically. So the first few used to come from this old scrap of a little bit of hedgerow left somewhere. But now we've got a forest at the bottom there that Russell collects quite a lot of. We did go further afield. We went to like Peppercorn Woods and Bucks Mills, which are local woods near the cliffs. And we started to collect from there, but once Russell kind of got it down and the forest, we just collected everything from around the farm now, on our land basically, pretty much. And like Russell said, in meadows, we want to try it. Meadows have like mycorrhizal connections, like orchids won't flower unless there's a certain amount of mycorrhiza in there. So we want to start collecting like field IMOs as well, but which will only be in meadows because they're not ploughed or sprayed or anything like that. Down in the hedgerow, down the bottom there, it's literally in the hedgerow because again, it hasn't been touched. We've got loads of early purple orchids that grow up down there, and that's about it. But that Delarizia fuchsii, like the common spotted one, you have to get a certain amount of kind of like microbial, fungal, mycorrhizal layers for it to start to flower and start to take over, basically. Which is probably why the apples is doing that. Yeah.
The other thing I forgot to say, because in case of windy, it's always better. And you can put logs over the top as well to hold the brash down. I forgot to say that. So you put your brash on and then logs over the top or a stone, because again, it's another thing that won't be hooked off in wind or whatever. Because you're planning out, say, oh, there's no wind today and it's lovely, and you go back and it's like, it's just making sure, being foolproof of what you're doing. Nature does what it wants to do, and in a bit, hopefully you'll see some blooms. But I haven't looked or any. It's the land of the gods. So, the last course, it was amazing. But again, it's slightly artificial because we've had to bring it up here for health and safety. Unless you all want to go over barbed wire and.
And I guess the stone kind of shows where it is, but it is like, again, like in the farming side, again, just know where it is so you're not wasting hours looking for it. Because you don't want to send your team down there and then you're like wondering where they are and they're looking for the IMO box they put out as well. So that's how it looks like in the woods, basically. So once Russell's brought it all around, very much like that, flat on the ground, built the duff around, logs around it like that. So what will happen now is Russell will go away, depending on when, what year it is. So if it's in the summer, we know 5 to 7 days we're looking at a bloom, hopefully. So day 4, Russell will come down. You do not open the top to have a look in. That's the key thing as well. Russell has his tea towel to look in to cut the light off, but if you look in, the UV will get in and just spoil the thing. It's also the same that if it is warm and you think it's ready to go, don't open it up to then have a look. You only open it up once we're ready to turn it into IMO2. Because once you open it up, it really starts to deplete quickly. So like Russell was saying, usually he'll take the sugar down to make IMO2 in situ, because the time it takes to then take it back to where you want to do it, you can lose a lot of that vigor quite quickly, basically. But how it happened is you literally come down, 5 days, Russell's made a slot, you put your hand under, your finger under. If it's cold, if it's 5 days, you'd probably be like, well, I've probably got a couple more days. If it's 10 days, you'd be like, it's probably gone over then, basically. But if you put your hands under there, it's like lukewarm. I'll come back the next day and check. And when you put your hand under there, it's like, oh, that's hot. That's when you know it's ready to go, basically. It's never like that. You may decide to collect it when it's slightly warmer, because maybe it's gone over a day or under a day. But that's what you're looking for. If it's stone cold underneath, and depending on when you've checked, it's either gone over or hasn't happened yet. But if it's warm, and it is warm, you'll know it when it's warm, then it's ready to go. And generally it's like, oh, that's really warm. That's when it's at its prime, ready to go, basically. So always check after the period you think. So 7 days, check after 4. It's a little bit warm, and then you check every other day after that until you finally get to the point you think you've caught it.
So this time of year, how long do you think?
This time of year, I reckon about a week, to be honest. Yeah. Now we're getting those temperatures and those light levels and stuff like that. Winter are the hardest ones because it can literally be 2 weeks, and you may just feel like literally a kind of like cold tea warmth because it's so cold in the ground. And the blooms change. So in the summer you get big white fuzzy blooms. In the winter they start to go a bit more kind of like red and yellow. And we're not here to capture fungi. Like I said, we're here to capture everything. So we're getting fungi, bacteria, yeast, absolutely everything is what we're capturing. So the yellows are generally like the yeast that we capture. The white blooms are the bacteria and the fungi and stuff like that. Your land will be different to ours. We're wet and cold every single day, so that's how long it takes for us. If you live in like the southeast, you may be getting boxes every 3 days. So you've also got to work out. So I would say in the beginning, depending on where you are, just check every other day and just see what's happening. pretty standard. It's, to be honest, in summer it's always a week before anything really starts going. But when you're first starting out, maybe check every like 2 to 3 days in the beginning, and then once you get into that week, maybe check every single day, and then you'll start to make a note. We're not very good at it, but we make notes, and so we can roughly make a kind of like overall pattern of when things should happen and so on and so on. So that's really important, is note keeping. We're not very good at that, but it is an important part of it as well.
I'm going to come later, and I'm leaving these boxes. I will cover them over, and what I will do is I will report back to Charlie, and hopefully she'll send you an email just to show you. If you don't get an email, it didn't work. If you do, you know, we'll show you, because the effort's gone into it. I might as well leave them anyhow. So, but I'm going to say I'll put a lot more brash over the top of them, and forget they're there for a week.
Yeah, sorry.
And blooms in the summer fuzzy and white, and did you say that's nice?
It's the collection of everything, but generally the fuzzy white blooms are bacteria, fungi, hopefully. The yeasts go, they make some of the rice a bit yellow, basically, and that's usually yeast that we're capturing. But you'll see, hopefully we'll see, but we do have pictures of what it looks like. I call it an IMO cake, and you know it's ready. You can literally hold the block of rice, finger and thumb, and it's like a solid block of rice. That is exactly how we place them into the woods, or wherever we collect them, that's how they go. Stop the rain, keep the wind out, build a nice nest around it of logs and leaves from around the area. And it looks exactly like that or that, and then that's how we leave them in the woods, basically.
But also on the big trees, don't be scared to put it on the south side, north side, different, you know, areas of the same area of tree, because you'll be surprised, because if the sun gets a lot of bacteria won't like that heat and UV, so they'll be more active in the back of it in the shady area. Those sort of things are also quite good. So if you're limited a little bit like us on what you have around you, you know, just play around. But one thing, do one box at a time to start with until you're confident, but don't put 5 or 6, because it will take a long time to, you know, it's all that stuff to do. So, but as you'll see in the next stage, you'll be surprised how much material you can get out of a small amount, which is what is great about it.
So for that box, is that shaded enough?
No. I would completely cover that with brash, ferns, and everything else.
That one's a really good example of how it will look like once we put the stuff around it and it's flat on the ground, basically. That is the final, the final one that we put it in.
I would put a lot more material over the top. Tels, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, so this is our massive woods, even more simulated, but again, for courses when we do it in the weather, we just can't do it. So I've simulated here, we've got a hedgehog hotel, which stays here all year round. That is then covered when I'm not using it. Okay, that has logs brought up from the woods and duff. I've put literally in there, so it makes it an artificial area. So, you know, if the gods are with us. So once we come down, you bring your tea towels, a mixing bowl. You don't have to use glass. I quite like the glass IKEA bowls because I can get my hands into them, but a bucket will do, is fine, is UV, because then you don't have to clear it. And I've also, if you see, I've got my sugar enough for 1 box. If you've got 2 boxes, you need 2 containers of the same sugar on that. But I'm only going to do an IMO 2 with 1 box. There's 3 in here, because then I can show you how you can then use the rice straight away to make IMO 3. Okay, so wish us luck. Where's he gone? Is he gone? He always runs away at this. He runs away at this point. So we do wreath making at Christmas, and the local place that we get all the Christmas trees from give us all these. So instead of wasting them, I use them here. But as Josh saying, it's not ideal. I have before used big brassica leaves, comfrey, but just remember they break down quite quickly. So you're adding more moisture. Yeah. Because, you know, I've got to, in theory, I've got to work out the canopy of a tree as well, the cover. So, you know, it's trying to make it as natural as possibly can. So we've got these sheets at the minute we're using, because we have a lovely polished concrete floor in the potting shed that we're not allowed to get dirty, so we have to use these sheets. So I utilise them, as I said, as a rain cover. So the only thing what you now got to remember is you've got a lot of material on top. So that's what I like about with the pot covers. You'll see there'll be pot covers as well on these. Just remember, tip it away, don't lift it off and drop it all over your boxes. Everyone's with bated breath, aren't you? Sorry?
Do you ever find grass snakes?
No, not yet. No, you got me worried. No, not at all. No, we have adders and we have grass snakes. So, because obviously we're doing this, you wouldn't actually do this. But I'm going to put my hand in. It's cold. It's cold. But, because I haven't opened them, so here we go. Where I have a something or nothing. And we have nothing. And we have nothing. And this is it. And we have nothing. Wow, I am so sorry about that, but this is the thing with doing it with nature and doing a slightly artificial area. This is what happens. I have pictures to actually show you that it does work. Because literally the last course I had 3 perfect blooms.
Does it grow out through the netting?
It will come up about that far, but I will show you. I've got pictures in my book to show you. But anyhow, so when you've got to this point here, to make IMO 2,
so
imagine
IMO 2 is how we give it a shelf life, and so it's what we're saying. So Russell makes it in situ so that it doesn't deplete on the way back. So again, in the book and that, it will say, you know, equal parts sugar to IMO. You can do it by volume. So if the rice fills up a quarter of the jar, you put a quarter of the sugar back in, basically. So you can do it by volume as well. But it's how we put the IMO one, once you captured it, into basically stasis. So the sugar creates osmotic pressure. It strips all the water out of the IMO, and then that puts all of the microbes into a cyst form. Best way to describe it, it's like Han Solo and Carbonite in Star Wars. Once it's in a cyst form, we can wake them up again by hydrating them. But by putting them in a cyst form, we've basically given them a shelf life. And so you can collect IMO boxes and IMO boxes and IMO boxes through the year. And then when you get to winter time and you have time, then you can use it to make IMO 3 into 4 into 5. But if you're putting out one box, so say this is IMO box Birch Farm produce field, but you've also got IMO box farm woods, and you've got IMO box farm houses, whatever. When you come, because you can store it all and send out loads of boxes throughout the year, when you come to open up your IMO cupboard and you've got all these IMO toes of different diversity in different places, when you come to make that IMO 3, you can make this amazing diversity from each IMO 2. And we're going to make the IMO 3, but it is literally a tablespoon of each IMO that you put into the final product.
So again, I'm afraid you're going to have to use your imagination. This is a beautiful bloom. You know, I am feeling very disappointed, but anyhow, that's what it is. So basically, it would all be stuck together. It'd be a lump, and you'll break it off into smaller parts into your mixing vessel. Well, I know that was 500 grams of rice. So now my 500 grams is sugar, and I would leave 50 grams left at the end. Organic, we just unrefined brown organic cane sugar. Again, you know, we're trying to come away from sugar because of the carbon footprint, but again, if you imagine this amount of sugar and the rice, carbon footprint of what you'll see later, it balances it out. So that little bit, the 50 grams will be then your cap. And to sort of about that sort of size, small sort of, you know, you can break it into about, I would say twice as big as a sugar cube. You know, I'll show you the sort of lumps up the top of the photographs, and then you're just gently massaging, you know, the sugar in. You're not mixing it. You don't want to break those lumps up anymore. And the reason why you put in the sugar also, it will fill the voids as you go in, and you would gently compact it, and then you would put a sugar cap on top. The only thing is in storage, you know, you would then check every week, and you might just have to put another little cap on top, just to keep any other bacteria that you don't want going off, obviously bits of rice sticking up. So it's always worth keeping that on as well. But at that point, this is where you have that 20-minute window. So the quicker you can do that, and then literally as soon as you've done it, cover it either in a bucket or something, you just keep it covered, okay? Because it's still active, it hasn't gone to sleep yet, because obviously the sugar hasn't got to work yet. And then you put it in a dark place and let it do its bit. So
how long have you got then to cover it up then? So you have to be really
20 minutes. So 20 minutes is what they say is your maximum window. The quicker you can do it, and what I found by measuring the sugar, I can literally go bloom in, bloom, sugar, covered. And I can do it in probably about 5 minutes. So, you know, it's minimalising that time of exposure to a minimum. But you can say, they say the maximum is 20 minutes really. So you obviously don't want, you know, this is an ideal solution if you've driven somewhere or it's quite far away, and it will last a lot longer. The other thing you can do is harvest a whole bloom and process it straight away. Okay, which is what we'll do next, which is be the IMO 3. Yep.
Would you just recover those?
I wouldn't. No, I would put it in the compost. Yep, yep. Just in case, obviously, it's starting to break down as well. Yep, disappointed, but
I think if we left it longer, they probably would have started.
yeah. You know, I mean, that's 9 days, but we've had really dropped in temperature overnight, down 2 and 3. So, again, it's very hard. The biggest thing is, when you do it, make sure you leave yourself time to do it, because you can't rush it, and that's when it goes wrong, when you're trying to rush it or artificially do it as well. You know, it's completely unnatural for me to be doing it like this, but it's trying to show. But the pictures will be, you know, make it apparent how it looks like and what obviously it breaks into. So imagine these, I will leave the other one down here, but imagine this had a big bloom on it. And I would cover it straight away, like the box, and I would take it at the top. When are we doing IMO 3? After lunch. So imagine we wouldn't be stopping for lunch normally. So basically, it's planning a lot of it. So you either do the sugar, which means you don't have to do anything else today, or you get all your materials ready, which we will do after lunch. You will then get that all ready, and then take your IMO 2 up there, like this.
How long did you say it stores when you do the sugar?
If you can keep a good cap on it, virtually indefinitely, won't it, Josh?
And by a good cap, do you
Yeah, just about an inch.
put another cap on top?
Yeah, because you'll find, because obviously it starts taking the moisture out of the rice to go into stasis, you will find it will drop down and you'll see bits of rice sticking up. It's just to keep base on top of that.
So do you just keep topping the sugar up then?
That won't affect it, because obviously that equal quantity has already done its business. So you're just keeping like a lid on it inside, because it has to be breathable, because it's still living. You need to keep that little bit of cap to stop any other bacteria getting into it.
Saying using the word cap, you're meaning a cap of sugar,
Yep.
not a plastic.
No, it's breathable. Yeah.
Leave the lid, no other lid on the jar.
No, just breathable. Just a breathable.
Cool, dry place.
Yeah. And they were cool, you know, hopefully it doesn't fluctuate too much in temperatures, because obviously you don't want them to get hot, because obviously the sugar gets warm. But, you know, it's my bio table. I don't clean. I probably wipe it out with a bit of vinegar, because I want it as diverse in my cupboard, because that's where I do all my LABs and everything else. So, you know, that's an area you to find. Some people think an old shed. I mean, if you've got space, the ideal place would be a shed by trees with a bare soil. That would be your ideal place to do any of this. We don't have that facility here, which is a shame. That would be ideal. An old shed, open floor, soil, to do your IMOs, anything you can do. Because obviously the next stage, ours is in the tractor shed, you know, with a polished concrete floor. So, you know, if you can look at an area to do the next stages, which would be an old shed or somewhere that you can utilise it, then you're onto a winner. It's nothing worse than starting it and thinking, oh my God, I've got to do something, because it just won't happen. It's just getting that preparation really, which hopefully will come apparent after lunch.
The IMO2, you don't want UV getting on it. So that's why we put it in a cupboard. That's why we made the IMO table or the sprays table, that the IMOs basically all go in there. And like Russell said, when a little bit like mould forms on top, you'd also put a little bit of a sugar cap on top as well, just to stop it getting in.
Which is what I kept that, if you notice when I measured the sugar, it was 550, because I had that extra little bit just to put the cap on straight away. And then probably in 3 or 4 days I would check, it just needs a little bit again, just a cap. And sometimes you can go on, for mine's probably could do with a cap now, but they're static.
So that one you've got there is as if you're going to do that stage up in...
No, there'll be a different stage. Okay, so that's IMO2 that way, but you can do IMO2 straight into 3. So you don't need sugar, okay, but you have to use all of it and within 20 minutes. So that's what I mean about the preparation, you know. So I will, again, simulate after lunch that I've run down and opened this and taken it up, and then show you the process. Because you might get a grey area that rain has got in that's creeping across. Half your box might be fine. You can save that half a box, okay? So you know you can use half the sugar, so you still can do that way. You know, don't look at it and go, oh, it's got blue in it. You can take those blues out. The secret I found is when you get rid of the bad stuff, and you'll know, your eyes and nose will tell you if it's bad. That's our survival instincts, okay? We're not going to want to go with something bad, so it will tell you, you know, and you will smell it. It will be a stiltony, horribly, you know, bacterial smell, but half of it might be absolutely fine. So then you could do half of the jar, the box, into half the sugar. So by measuring that, you can say, right, I've taken half that box, I'm going to use it. I can use half the sugar I've weighed out. Do you see what I mean? So this is the IMO2. These are in Stasis now. As you can see, 2023, 2022, and 23. And a lot of the others I've already used up. But these were big jars. So these last literally the next stage after lunch. You will be surprised how little of that I will use to make IMO 3 and 4.
When did you stop capping it with sugar?
When did I stop?
Yeah.
When I ran out of sugar. That is, yeah, literally. I was waiting for, but these haven't had a cap for a month.
So you just sort of...
I'm in here every day. I check my jars every day.
Right.
You know.
So what would you put sugar on if you felt like it was starting to effervesce?
If you could see anything on there, you imagine in your compost heap, okay, you got a load of lovely brown, you got some green sticking up. Well, that's the same principles with the rice. If you got little bits of rice that haven't gone to Stasis, I mean, you're talking 4 years old. So it has completely congealed into a mass.
So if you saw bits of rice sticking up...
Oh, we keep putting a cap on, probably for the first year. Okay, but, you know, it depends on where you live, the temperatures, because obviously if you get a warmer period, the sugar may dissolve a little bit in the heat and it will drop down. You know, it's the same, anyone do with fermenting? You know, it's the same thing, you put weight on to keep everything below it. That's what you're doing with the sugar, you're just keeping everything below the air level.
So you can stop capping after a year?
Yeah, but still check it regularly because obviously the ambient air temperatures can make it change, or someone's knocked the lid off, or the elastic band goes, because they do in time, and a fly's got in. That's the other thing to watch out for, the lids. The elastic bands do ping after a time, they perish, and then your lid falls off, and you'll get insects and things. So it's worth checking. You know, these are worth a lot of money to yourselves, not just in time, but what it can give you in the future. So it's worth just keeping an eye on them and treating them well. You know, I change the lids every year, if not sooner.
You don't use this glass, you've got glass lids over there?
No, it's breathable because it's a living, even though it's still living, even though it's been put into stasis, it's still alive. So anything with a breathable lid is alive. Okay, when we ferment in a closed environment, which is anaerobics, no oxygen, that's the difference.
Is that just like t-shirt jersey material?
Yeah, you see these? These are my old t-shirts that I cut up. I don't know why I did it at home on Friday night, but yeah. But the thing is also, because obviously we're part of a corporate, we have to show nice things. Like we started using these black labels. I didn't like them because they're plastic. So I've gone back to my paper labels, my dyslexic writing. So if you see something spelt wrong, sorry, but well observed. No, just going back to these. I'm just going to put these in the cupboard, but does anyone want to just have a quick close look at them before I put them in the cupboard? Because again, just try and keep them out as much as you can of the UV. 1 box each jar. No, that's a lie, 2 boxes in that one. They were 1 box, so you don't have to do it all the time. So as I'm going to say, if you can make time to do it once, and you put it into IMO 2, if you're happy to use sugar, then you have a material that will last you 3-10 years.
Lunch. Do you all have a good lunch? All nice? Brilliant. Brilliant. So now we're going to go into IMO 3. So we've gone to the woods, we've collected a successful box, we've brought it back, we've decided to put it into an IMO 2 so we can store it in our cupboard. And now the job of IMO 3 is how we grow all of those different IMO 2 collections into one big diverse pile, basically. So what we're trying to do is grow it to a size that we can then distribute it onto our land. To basically take a teaspoon of that and make it something big enough that we can spread to how many acres or meters or whatever we have on our land, basically. So this is IMO 3. So IMO's 3 job is to bulk it, to get it going, basically, to get it to a size. With IMO 3, you want to use a carbohydrate, again, a carbohydrate and a carbon source to grow the microbes on, because they're really hungry. They want to wake up, we put them to sleep. When they wake up, they want to kind of like eat everything. And so we use, you can use whatever you have on the farm, so you can use things like beech nut shells or old dry leaves or anything like that. For time and efficiency, we use organic bran and organic oats and wheat. We have tried to do it with a brewery using the spent wort. It becomes really hard to collect it efficiently, that's the problem. So sometimes we can get a spent wort or whatever, but to get it going, we use a bran and a wheat. Organic bran is really, really cheap from horses, basically, like horse industry, and the oats are pretty cheap as well. So that's generally what we use to get stuff going. We don't have time to go onto our farm and get little shells and leaves and stuff like that, so we have to speed it up that way. One year we did grow the oats. We just haven't got around to doing it again, basically. Once we find a spot on the farm, we'd love to like grow the oats for it as well, basically, but we haven't gone back to do that again yet. So what Russell's do, we do everything in bucket measurements. We have a universal bucket size. Again, we have to make it efficient. So if Russell wasn't doing this, we can tell the people how many buckets of certain ingredients. It also helps with having the equal ratios, basically. So we know 1 bucket of that to 2 buckets of this. So we have a universal bucket size. This is where we start to add our solutions. We're going to be covering all the solutions tomorrow, but we add all of our solutions in here. We add things like fish amino acid, which is the fish head and guts, which we're making tomorrow. We add something called maintenance solution, which will be going in tomorrow. That's vinegar, FPJ, which is a fermented plant juice, and a medicine called OHN, like a herbal medicine. The reason for the solutions is that they're full of lactobacillus and food sources that they're going to wake the microbes up as well. They're going to take them out of that stasis. It's also the water. So where the IMO is in its cyst form, we need the water to wake them up, to hydrate them out of that cyst form and wake up again as well. So it's different carbohydrates and a solution. And then Russell's going to show you how much IMO we use, which is minimal, to be honest. Like I said, one IMO box will last you a long, long time as well. So these do last a long, long time. Russell was saying earlier that the ideal world is we'd be making this in a shed outdoors with some trees behind us on a soil floor to inoculate it. That would be the perfect world. So we'd have a lovely soil floor, we'd be making our IMO piles, the tree roots would be going under the shed, inoculating it and helping us. We don't live in that world, unfortunately. We have the tractor shed, and that's about it, because we have gale winds and everything like that. So what we do is we make it in our IMO box. As you see, everything's on wheels as well. Give yourself moving, don't make it permanent. The IMO box is made of a cedar wood. Cedar wood just has an ever so slight ability to like hold back nasty pathogens that want to get in. It's got a, like kind of a like an antibacterial thing about it for negative things that want to get in. Like the IMO box, and that's really what it is, a giant IMO box, slits so it can breathe, so it still lets air in, but that's how we make our IMO free. We're limited to the amount we can make by the size of our IMO free box, basically. Russell has done a lot of work on this. The thing what we're trying to do is we are going to make the pile, and then Russell will have to watch it, and he has to heat it up. I have to do it in Fahrenheit because this is how I learned it, I'm sorry. He has to heat it up to about 120 Fahrenheit over 7 days, and then he has to let it cool down for another 7 days to the original temperature. So it starts off at about 70, up to 120 over 7 days, back down to the original temperature another 7 days. So it's 14 days in total. If you go above 120, you're going to cook it, and it's just going to become a thermophilic bacterial pile of nothing. And so we have to use thermometers, we measure the temperature, and Russell will show you, but he raises it, he builds it up to heat it up, or he flattens it to cool it down. So the more that we build it up in the box, it will get hotter because it's more mass and moisture. And then when we want to cool it down, he spreads it out thinner because then it's more air surface to cool it down. But we're going to go over that anyway. So that's the big thing about this. 2 weeks, slowly up to 120 Fahrenheit, and slowly cool it down another week as well, another 7 days. So it takes 2 weeks to make in total. So you do have to be vigilant in this stage. You can't just go away for a couple of days and come back because it will heat up probably. And so this is the this is the point. If anyone has labour requirements or anything like that, you can see why we make this in winter basically, because it's the time that we can actually really watch the IMO box, because we're not out planting 20,000 blocks and irrigating and stuff like that. So which is why we make it as well. Cool. So Russ is going to show you how he makes it. We'll show you how he builds it up, layers it, flattens it, and everything like that as well. I will say what's cool about this is once it gets fermenting, it makes the vehicle shed smell like a bakery. It literally smells like banana bread in here. And you just end up with this massive white fuzzy pile. It's pretty crazy, to be honest. But Russ will take you through all of the different stuff that we use in that.
Okay, back with me. We've got polished floor. I would still say if you're going to do it on soil, do the same thing. So the first thing before anything is wet your surface, because that surface will draw moisture you're putting in, and you want to keep it moist for at least, until it starts really getting hot. So you put it on there on a drier soil that's covered, it will absorb it away from there and it won't activate. As Josh said, so I've got 3 buckets. So I've got 5 kilos of bran, 5 kilos of oats, was up to the top, but obviously it's sunk down, and then 2.5. So we've got, as you can say, 15 kilos of each there. Ignore those buckets for now. And what I will do is just literally, now some people put a little bit of wood chip in it. This, you don't have to. We don't as such, because we don't have all our wood chips going back on as biomass. It's just some people like to put like an organic matter within it, but you can do that on the next IMO 4 anyhow. So there's a lot of cheeseburgers in there, isn't it? So you can imagine that is just super duper carbohydrates. I always mix dry in first. Snow shovels with a short handle is a godsend. And if you've got a bad back like me, you've normally got one with a taller handle. But the guys use it in the field to clear paths, and I won't show you the state it's in. So, as we were saying when we collected the IMOs from down in the wood, and we got the IMO 2 into sugar, and the other box, that we just covered, that one there, and I said you would have to come back up and do it straight away. So you would do this process before you harvest. Because what you could do, even if it was, you can see the benefit of doing it in sugar, because you would have to do this probably 2 days before you even think it could be ready, and this could be sat around for a couple of days, which you could cover with like an old duvet just to keep the moisture in, because it will start activating, but you won't have the solution, you would only have a maintenance. So what I will show you first is adding the box straight away. Because our box wasn't clumpy, it's just going to go in loose. And it doesn't matter putting this in, because it's just another carbohydrate. So you've picked it up from down there, you've got a good harvest, and it goes in. And you would still then put a maintenance solution in it. And then you just, with rainwater as well, always use rainwater for this one. One thing I would say to you, whenever you do this, make sure you've got a fairly biggish area, especially not one of these boxes. Because when Josh first did it, we filled that by half. When it got to 100, I had nowhere to put it. I literally had to spread it all over the floor. So smaller amounts that you can move from one area to the next, because that's cooler, and then you can move it back. It is a little bit wrestling a bear, as Josh would say. So you imagine you've mixed your IMO box straight in, you add rainwater, but this is going to have a double whammy. So in here is the maintenance solution, and my IMO2 that has been in a jar. Okay, that was the ones that are obviously suspended in sugar. And this is how much we will put in. Now, what I would normally do is take a teaspoon out of my 6 jars. So I get the biodiversity. But you'll be looking at that much. It's not a lot, is it? From one box of material. So you can imagine how many, you know, we should end up with 60 kilos of inoculated material. One thing that, just in case I forget, when you get IMO4, you can put it on your bed, you can either sprinkle it all over, but you then have to cover it with a material. But you can also dig a little hole every metre and just put a little handful in each, cover it over. It does exactly the same. It stops you having to worry about, oh my God, we're going to cover it straight away, especially if it's a hot day. So that's another way you can use it. So maintenance solution, that handful in there. I always soak this bucket the day before, just to get it hydrated. So I'm just mixing up that handful I put in there. You'll be surprised how much water is. So there's no set volume of water. So what I always do is do a bucket and then a watering can. Yes, carry on.
What is a maintenance solution?
You'll learn about that. That's all the K&F solutions, which would be, yeah, you'll go through the solutions. It's quite hard which way to do the courses, because they do cross over so much. But basically, maintenance would be FAA, vinegar, FPJ, LAB, and that all sounds foreign, doesn't it? Don't forget, 4 years ago, that all sounded very foreign to me. Yeah, that was.
Real stuff.
Yeah.
What if we didn't have that? Would we use the stuff out of the jar?
Yeah. So that's the only reason I was showing you the box. If you didn't do the sugar F2, you bought it straight from when you harvested it. You mix it straight in. So that puts a lot of pressure on you. Okay. So that's only people don't want to use sugar. So to me, it would say that small amount of sugar, do sugar. Because it gives you so much more. You can do it in the winter. Yeah, absolutely. You're not just harvesting one box. You could put 2 boxes in if you had 2 blooms, but to do it into a jar and accumulate, and then you literally you're putting that diversity in. Absolutely. You know, and there's no set ways. You know, there's the 2 ways of doing it, but you can jiggle around whatever feels easier for you.
When you go straight from the field, do you have to add the stuff from the jar as well?
When you spray the field?
When you come straight from the field?
Yeah. Well, that's why I took the jar down there and did it straight away with the sugar.
Yeah, but if you did the sugar down in the field...
Yeah, as long as you could come back here and keep it covered, within 20 minutes you can do the same process in a shed or whatever. Yeah?
But when you're adding that directly...
You would need, within 20, without the sugar, if you bring the whole box, you would have to put it in straight away.
And when you do that,
yeah.
you have to add stuff from that jar that's like 3 years old.
No. That's, so you've got 2 ways of doing it. You can either do the box as you harvest it straight into here, or IMO2, as they're both called, IMO2 into sugar, which then means you can store it and do this when you have time, when the weather's really bad.
That half a handful that you put into the solution, and say you've got 6 of those jars, are you doing 6 half?
No, so I would reduce,
Okay.
basically in the dream it would be a teaspoon of each.
Okay, thank you.
But the only trouble is that you can't then cross-contaminate, so it's like 6 spoons. You just try and not cross-contaminate as much as possible. Doesn't mean it makes an amazing difference, but I prefer less chance. Because if you've got one that may be turning and you've dipped it in all of them, you could turn all of them. So it's just being on that cautious side. You can go bigger, but the more volume you have, the bigger area you're going to have to turn it out of. So that's the maximum I can fit in here, is that 15 kilos, 7.5 kilos. So that's why there's 3 buckets.
And the second question was, do you have to use the, I can't remember what they're called, the mixtures, the solutions?
Maintenance. You don't have to, but if you're putting that effort in, you might as well put something extra into it as well, because that again becomes a carrier of those solutions to your bed. Okay, does that make sense? So if instead of you spraying foliarly, if it's once you go into IMO4 it dries, you can then inoculate it with not just IMO, but you'll have your maintenance solution which will leach when it hydrates again in the bed into the soil. So, you know, you're doing the soil with your spray, but also when you reset a bed, you're actually adding. It's just, you know, if you've got the material, do it. If you haven't got the solutions, then just do it with rainwater.
So also the solutions, things like FAA, they're full of fats and oils and carbohydrates. And so when the microbes in the IMO touch it, they just go absolutely rapid and crazy and start consuming it. So a lot of the solutions are also that it's like it's a really chunky food source to get them going as we've woken them up. So it's like lots of lactobacillus, which gets consumed by microbes and makes activity. But like in the FAA, for example, fat, oil, carbs, those microbes are going to consume that and go rapid, and they'll start to culture the pile really, really quickly and wake up, basically. Yeah. It's a food source for them to wake up in, yeah.
So you could use potassium juice as your solution?
It's different. You could put potassium juice in that if you wanted to. Maintenance solution is a medicine, it's a hormone, and it's a regulator, which is the vinegar, basically.
So basically I'll be mixing it until I can squeeze it and just a little dribble of water comes out my knuckles. Okay, so that's really consistent. But because it was so dry, what would be the ideal thing is mix it, cover it with a duvet blanket or something, come back to it and then refill it, because you'll find it probably soaked up a lot more moisture, and you squeeze it and its bone is dry. So you're going to think about that situation that it will dry. So it's more of a dribble out your fingers than a droplet out your fingers. And you know, you'll be so surprised how quickly, once it starts warming up, how quickly it can dry out.
And it's a medicine as well. Yeah, you're going to all tomorrow. Yeah. It's in your booklet now. So the maintenance is made up of something called OHN, which is herbal nutrient. It's made up of vinegar, just a straight organic vinegar, and it's made up of something called FPJ, which is fermented plant juice. So the plant juice is the hormone, the vinegar is the regulator, and the herbal nutrient is the herbal nutrient, basically. And those three together make up a base called maintenance solution. And everything is built on maintenance solution, basically.
Do you find you get better results from using the IMO from the jar?
Yeah, I think.
IMO from the field direct?
Yeah, because I get more diversity because I've got 6 jars, so I'm relying on 1 bloom, where with the jars I'm relying on 6 blooms.
You're also using a lot more IMO when you...
Exactly, so you've used that whole box with that jar will probably last...
Embodied effort to make the box.
Yeah.
Losing because you played straight into it.
Yeah.
It's also IMO2's got sugar in it, and microbes like us love sugar as well, basically. So that's another element to it. And the vinegar in the maintenance is also to help regulate the sugar content in the IMO as well. So that's one of the reasons we use maintenance. It really comes, I'm sure Russell's explained this, but it comes down to what your personal preference is. There is nothing wrong in using sugar. We're trying to step away from it to match the farm's philosophy, but it's going to hurt us in doing it. It's going to remove a lot of efficiency for us. And as growers, efficiency is key. It really comes down to what you want from it, but there is nothing wrong in using that. I'm a machine on the farm, and you've probably noticed today I drink about 10 litres of coffee every single day. So I can criticise that, but I am drinking cocoa beans from Colombia and stuff like that. So it really comes down to your own personal preference. But you can only use sugar in everything that we do over the next 2 days, because it's the only thing that will create something called osmotic pressure. You can't use molasses, you can't use anything like that. It has to be a granulated sugar. And we do invest financially, we do buy organic sugar to kind of really help that as much as possible. It's because it's the osmotic pressure that we want from the sugar. No alternative. You make them, like Russell said, you make them straight. They get stinky. They get stinkier for it, and you lose a bit of the efficiency. You can do it, but it comes down to you. What the sugar does for a grower, it just gives you so much flexibility. You make it, you put it in your cupboard, and you do it when you can do it. As opposed to Russell now makes a box, he has to sprint back, get it in, and he has to make the IMO pile the minute that box is ready. As opposed to IMO2, he can wait until winter and make it all in winter. So that's the difference.
So do you think, for example, dehydrated apple juice will
No, so what sugar does, what sugar does is it draws the moisture out, it explodes the plant cells in the process, and that explosion of plant cells strips all the hormones and minerals and everything out of it. So you need that osmotic pressure in order for it to work.
Can you see?
Is that right?
Yeah, because I know that's going to dry out and absorb more, because at the minute it's only the surface that's taking the moisture in, the brown in it, especially the oats take longer to soak, as you do know with porridge. The longer you leave it, the more it absorbs. So that's probably about right. Try not to get on anyone's shoes. So that is your IMO3. Next thing is our lovely, if you use a different area for where you mixed, where you're going to store it like we do, again, water it because that's dry wood. So that is IMO3 finished, ready to go in IMO4. If you're outside, just to keep a little bit of warmth in, I use Hessian sometimes because don't forget the ambient air temperature is really cold when we do most of ours at winter. So we have a lid, we have a roof, but also I have Hessian, and it's surprising how different that can make. Also stops it drying out quite so much. But a lot of people that are outside will do it with a duvet cover. They reckon it really works well. Obviously duck down, not polyester. But that's your own preference. If it's going to go to landfill, you might as well use it, haven't you? And you say you can do smaller. You could do, 5 kilos of brown, 5 kilos. I don't think you can go great small. You couldn't just do a handful really.
Also, Russell got those good, I call them pooper scoops, but good ice scoops or whatever they're called. The snow shovel, sorry, that's it. Yeah. They're really, really good as well.
One of the best garden tools, believe me. Get one. But don't get the cheap ones that snap very quickly. If everyone wants to come, so that is now set for me to cover, put a probe in it, to wait for it to warm up. And hopefully within 5-6 days it will start creeping up.
Did you say 120 Fahrenheit?
Yeah.
What's that in centigrade?
No, because again I just only...
So does it have to increase in temperature at a steady
Yeah. You only intervene when it gets probably about 112, because literally within an hour it can jump to 118. Okay, so Fahrenheit. This is Fahrenheit. Yeah. So the way I say to you is, if you've moved it at 112 and all you would do is slightly move it to slightly cooler, if you're going away for a few hours, okay, because it will jump quickly. But if you're around it when you know that temperature, let it get to 118, 16 to 18, move it from that space to the cooler space, okay, you will find it might drop 1 or 2 degrees, but also because you've aerated it, it might peak. Then you spread it out quite flat. Okay, you have to take drastic. It is, you really have to be on it, because it can jump so quickly, because we can't control it. That is an unnatural environment for all that bacteria and microbes, so it can peak and go really quick.
What sort of length of time did you say? It's up to 7 days it takes to get up?
Yeah, sometimes I've had it start start climbing quite quickly day 4 or 5. It depends on the ambient temperature, what the mix was,
So from day 4?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
4 days you can be a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, you have to. It's towards the end, because we've done it before and it was like 112, and I thought, well, I'll just lay it out a little bit, and I literally come back in the morning, it was 124, which is okay. Do you know what I mean? It's not, but I've had it go up as an experiment, 138, and it's no good, because it basically cooks itself to death. So unnatural to have that amount of carbohydrate. And that's the trouble. This is where we're doing Mother Nature, but tweaking it for our own development that is not natural. So it is a little bit, as long as you've got the space to move it to a cooler space, and you might have to be moving it every hour during the day. So this is where the winter factor comes in. Don't do it in spring like with the propagation, because I'm not going to have time. I'm going to have to give this to someone else to keep an eye on now, because else I'll lose it. So that's the beauty of using the sugar. I know it's the carbon footprint and everything else, but to me, that amount of sugar will save you time, money, and you will get a lot more material from one bloom, especially if you don't get many blooms. I've probably done 40, 50 boxes, and I'll be honest, I've probably had 20 blooms, and some of those have been off, only half blooms, so don't expect. So, when you get a good bloom, you don't want to just chuck it in one pile. I want to keep this for quite a while. The only thing I was saying, in the sugar, you can leave it as long as you want. Just remember, it's the same as everything when you ferment it and keep it. It has a lifespan. It might be 10 years, might be 20, but, just don't do as much that lasts you 10 years. I prefer you to make enough and use it in 2 years. Do you see what I mean? So, as fresh as you can, you're going to benefit more, because some will die because they can only go to sleep so far. I mean, I don't know the science behind it all. Martin can.
Okay, so from the 4th day, you check it
Yeah, I mean, I would check it every morning once I've done it. Yeah, I'm going to say day 3, day 4, you know. But the thing is, if you check it every day when you do it, you're into a routine. Check it in the morning, check it before you go home, check it at lunchtime. That's the 3 times I will check it, okay? You know, even if you put your car keys on it or something, so you have to come back to it. Because I know what it's like, oh, you do this, or the, you know, pipes burst, and you know, oh my God, yeah, that's the difference. So until it gets really warming up to about 110, 3 times a day, and it'd be good for you to understand how it goes up. So we bought a barbecue thermometer that connects to your phone. I thought it'd be brilliant. I can go and do stuff, it alerts me. As soon as I walk out of the tractor shed, I'm out of range. So it doesn't work. But it depends if you want to spend more money. I expect there is probes that have a longer distance. So that is a possibility. But yeah, to start with, just get into that habit, because once you've done it for 2 or 3 days, it's in your routine, it's psycho that you've got to keep checking it, and then you will have to work a lot harder towards the end just to keep it. You want to keep it perfectly, really, between 115 and 118. That would be the perfect, to gently turn it.
For 7 days.
Yeah, well, it will naturally drop down. It will peak, but if you cool it down, so basically what happens is that the food there, they're absorbing it, they're multiplying, you know, they're having babies and they're eating. That's what brings the heat up, because there's so much food. If you imagine that bacteria or fungi in a crop of a pigeon that's died, it will disappear very quickly. That is a lot of carbohydrates. So it will just keep eating and eating and eating, multiplying, and basically get hotter and hotter, because you could say I put 1,000 microbes in there, but with that carbohydrate it's probably 1 million now. So that, you know, and if you allow it to keep going, it will just keep eating, because all it wants to do is eat and reprocreate. And then it will just cook itself and kill itself, because it's not natural. Yes, sorry.
So am I understanding correctly, you have to keep it at like between 115 and 118, 20 max.
Yeah.
And to keep it there, you just move it around?
Yeah. So in here, because when we first did it, Josh wanted me to fill the whole box about that deep. And of course, it got to 120, and I already been trying to turn it. But also by turning it, you can add oxygen, which makes it invigorate itself again. So I ended up literally having to pile it on the floor to cool it down. So what we've learned is by doing the 15 kilos, there's enough to move it to that side to cool down. And then when that warms up, this side's cooled down, you can move it back. So as long as you have a space to move it, because some people say just turn it on the same pile, but I will guarantee you put your hand on that ground underneath, it's warm. So you're adding that heat straight back into it. So my what I've learned, you have to move it from one space to the next space.
When you move it, do you try to not add oxygen to it?
Some people say turn it. That sometimes cools it down a little bit, but also it can accelerate it. You know, I turn it. But I know that I'm going to have to keep an eye on it every hour when it gets to that 112, 114.
And does it naturally stop to heat at some point?
No, it will cook itself. If you don't maintain it and cool it, it will just peak.
Okay, so after 7 days you just try.
Oh yeah. So yeah, if you keep moving, you keep at 120. That you basically, they do not reprogress anymore because they've eaten what they've needed. Those million have eaten and they're going, oh, I'm fed up now. And that's when it starts cooling down. That's by you cooling it down. But by, you know, if you don't turn it, it just wants to consume it all. That's the difference. And that's by turning it, by keeping it below 120, you stop that happening.
You don't want to sanitize it.
No, because
you keep increasing that temperature, right? You'll sanitize it.
yeah. They just can't survive in that heat.
So you get it to 180, say,
Yeah.
and you reduce the temperature a bit, and then you put it back, and then eventually it brings its temperature down to its own accord.
Yeah, because you're not allowing it to go.
Start to know it's ready.
Sorry?
That's the point of when
Yeah, yeah, and it will naturally start dropping down, and it will go down to basically the core temperature, which is the ambient air temperature, 56, 70, depends what the ambient air temperature is. And the easiest way to do that is you've got a probe on the side, turn it on, and then put it in there. Oh yeah, it's the same. So it's dormant. So then we can go on to IMO 4.
Could you do this process that you're doing in the box in like a little shed?
That I do. This is artificial because we have no shed.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can't.
Would you use a metal shed, do you think? Or do you think that would make it too hot?
Long as it's open floor.
Yeah, so
If you've got an open floor, it doesn't matter if metal, plastic, you know, whatever you've got, you know, I'm a great believer of using what you have.
yeah.
You know, I prefer you to buy, instead of buying a new shed, buy the blue truncheon to make fertilizers and different things like that. There's a lot, yeah. Just use what you have. I mean, and as I said before, you can just make a rain and sun-proof cover, an old tent. People have done it with before.
And you put the hessian on just for the first day or few days.
Yeah, just to keep, yeah, because once it starts getting, you don't want, no, yeah, no, because it will accelerate it. The only time you possibly would have to put the hessian is say you 116 and you turned it and it went back down to say 112, 113 and it just stayed like that from the next day. You think, nah, you cover it again and it might just pick up again.
And you shouldn't need to add any more water at this stage.
You should not need, no. I mean, ours dries out more in here because obviously the wood absorbs any of the moisture. This is what I said about soaking. So normally I would actually soak this 2 days before. So that would, but you'll be surprised how quickly that will dry just by its own heat, you know.
And with the box, so like Russ was saying, you want to gradually heat it up to 120. You don't want to do it all in one go because it will cook really quick. And then it will naturally start to cool down once you've done it. And like you said, once it starts to naturally cool down, it's reached its kind of like absolute apex, and then it's going to start to gradually cool down, basically. It can sometimes be like wrestling a bear, like it's just going up and up and up and up, and then that's up to you to like spread it out thinly, cool it down, and then when the temperature's dropping, you build it up a little bit more and start to heat it. So by building it up, we're raising the temperature. By laying it flat, we're cooling it down. And that's what you're balancing between to finally gradually get to that 120 Fahrenheit where it should peak, and then it will naturally start to cool down back to its original temperature. So it takes 2 weeks to make. The reason why we don't want to cook it, like Martin was saying, sterilization, these are not thermophilic microbes. You know, they're not things that live in hot, toasty conditions. So if we go above that 120, we're creating a very unnatural environment for them, and you're going to cook it and it will just become all thermophilic bacteria like a compost pile, and you would have obliterated all of the indigenous stuff that we put into it in the beginning. So that's why it's really important we don't let it get above that, basically. So that's IMO 3. So IMO 3 is all about taking the IMO 2 and growing it into a decent sized material to then make IMO 4. So Russell's going to make IMO 4, and IMO 4 is how we add farm soil, and this is important, it has to be farm soil, so we use loam from the farm to then introduce our IMO 3 to what our soil is like. So we're introducing it to the farm soil, we're going to grow it again. It's exactly the same process again as IMO 3, so we add equal weight soil to the pile, we do the process again, we water it so it drips through our fingers, we heat it up to 120, we cool it back down over 2 weeks, and that's IMO 4, and that's when you have something ready to use in potting mix, garden, compost tea, and everything like that. As part of our management program, our potting mix does contain farm loam as well, and as part of our farm system, the guys will scrape the paths once a year between the veg beds. That will go to a loam bin for 2 years, kill off the weed bank and seed bank, much like Dickster as they do the potting mix. We take that loam and we use that in our potting mix, but we also use it to make IMO as well. I'm a really firm believer in getting our seedlings and inoculants used to what the farm soil is like as well. So part of our farm management plan is a way of generating loam that we can utilise as much on the farm as well. Basically. But the IMO 3 is about taking all of your IMO 2s and growing them into one pile. So a lot of it is about, it depends what you want from it and what you would do. You could use a spoonful of it, but it's in a stasis. What this gives them is a food source to really get them growing and waking up. If you're going down the route of compost teas, if that's something you want to do, then it kind of, you could add a spoonful of that into it, and you could You could populate it by using aerated compost teas to spray it out. But what this is also about is that Russell will have 10 different IMO2s from all around the farm and away, and he puts them into one pile now, and then it's about growing that complete diversity in one, basically.
It's not a minimum size that you could use, because it's not like compost.
No. People now do this using dumpers and diggers, and they make piles the size
you
of...
You make smaller ones, if you're trying to use for smaller garden.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be that big. You can make something that big, basically. IMO4, the IMO4 that Russell's going to make, to be honest, we can use that on half the produce field. So it takes 2 of those piles to scatter across the whole farm produce field, basically. So it goes, it's not a mulch, it's an inoculant, so we literally scatter it on the beds like icing sugar. It literally just gets scattered really loosely across icing sugar as well.
When you say inoculant, do you mean almost akin to a pesticide, or something that cures that?
No, it's an inoculant in the sense that it's there to inoculate our soil. That's what it's there to do. It's there to get the woodland microbes and the woodland characteristics into our soil, basically. What's amazing about IMO4 is that you can then dry it, allow it to naturally dry, and you can store it in Hessian sacks once it's done, and then you can hydrate it and use it later down the line as well. So that's how we use it in potting mix as well. So it'll either go, so once Russell's made it, IMO4 will either go straight onto the farm beds, or Russell will put it into Hessian sacks. We have a separate IMO box for storing IMO, another little cedar box, and then that means that when we want it for potting mix or liquid tea or whatever, we can just take that IMO4 that's been dried, like the IMO2, wake it up using hydration and use it down the line as well. So we can store it as well.
Same with the compost. Once it's dried, you can sieve it. So obviously the fine grill you use, you can use to add into your potting mix. You know, even if you buy milk, it doesn't hurt just to put a sprinkle in the mix in. You know, and if you use biochar or even perlite, you know, you can mix it with your perlite, then mix it in, you know, so there's a way. But once I've mixed this, I'll show you how little you actually need to inoculate every metre of your bed as well. So scattering is a good way if you cover it, because it covers the whole bed. But the other way, as I said, just a small handful in each metre, you know, will, for size, it will creep through. So on exactly however you know, because we cover our beds, so we know if we can scatter it, cover it, done. So, because I know exactly how much of the 15 and 15, so I've actually ended up with another same amount of pure soil. So that's our own loam that's been sat in the bin for a year. And then what I do is mix it in, and then I've got a little bit more maintenance solution. You don't put any more IMO in this, because obviously that's already in there. That's just a maintenance solution again, just to give it a boost. You can do it with rainwater, whatever. It's just what I had spare, so I'm not going to waste it, because I know this will go into here and then store. So this normally, as I was explaining, should be a lot more lumpier and stuck together. It's because we had to empty out and move everything. It's broken up a lot. So it's not ideal to move it lots. It will naturally form. It's exactly the same as in the box. You'll see it with the microbes. They will fuse the rice together. They will do the same with the oats and everything else. They will naturally make clumps. You know, they're quite big, but once it's dry, you can then break it a little bit. You don't want to break it up because you don't know if you're snapping microbes on the break line or anything. So, but yeah, you could break that up a little bit more. So as you see the picture, that would have been what this IMO3 looked like before it cooled down with that haze. And it is a lovely smell. It's hard to explain. But as you see, watch out for invaders of loam. Not that they make any difference, they'll probably cook it, but I forgot what I was going to say now. And we're going to go to the same consistency but slightly drier. So not running at your fingers, because once you've got loam, you'll be surprised how much that loam will hold more moisture. So if it was 15 kilos, so it's 15 kilos of material I did originally, so it's 15 kilos, exactly the same amount. Yeah.
And that's always the case, right? Like from the beginning to the end of this process,
Yeah.
it was always equal to
Yeah.
what you
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it you will find is equal, which makes my life a lot easier. I mean, originally we were doing 30 kilos of material and 30 kilos of soil, which gives us a 60 kilo of end material, but it's the space. So that is manageable at 15, and that'll still give me 30 kg of inoculated material. For what? I don't know, £5 of material per bag, 20 quid, 25 quid maybe of the sugar, if you're keeping it in sugar. But that sugar is only going to be what, 10p for each time you do it?
So there's no new carb in the IMO4, right?
No, because there's still carbohydrates left in there.
That's enough for them.
Yeah.
You add the solutions again, so you add the solutions again, you can add the solutions again, and again, that's another kickstart of food source, basically. So there's just no need for the carbohydrates at that point.
Yeah, because there's FPJ, so there's sugars, there's FAA, which has sugar in it as well. So that's like the Red Bull, and that's the remnants of the McDonald's.
Would you eyeball the maintenance solution liquid, like the amount that you put in?
No, I do because I know it, but yeah, I know how much per bucket now, but yeah, always until you, not the word cocky, but because yeah, it's worth just keeping it close as you can. And it is another good way if you got liquids that you got, you think, don't you need them? You can put them in as well. Don't always have to be the same. Gets a bit heavier now with the soil, by the way. That's all those hormone replacements you keep giving me. Any questions? I will try and answer as I get out of breath.
Why do you not call it a substrate, your carbs?
Pardon?
Why don't you put it in the carbs collection like your substrate?
Just what I read. Basically, because most people know about carbs. If you can relate it more to food, if it's going into a food system, it's trying to change. I've lost my water in the mouth. Bear with me, I just get some more water.
Calculate again, basically. So is everyone happy on like IMO 3 and 4? You know, so 4 is the final stage. It's really important. It's farm soil, not compost, nothing like that. It's the soil of the farm or your garden or your land that you want the IMO to get used to then spread out everywhere, basically. Like I said, that pile that Russell's done there, that will easily do a quarter of the farm, maybe even a half the farm, basically. So it goes a long, long way. So the produce field where we use a lot of the IMO is 2.5 acres, basically. Yeah. So that'll do, basically, about an acre, yeah. And we're just broadcasting it by hand. I mean, you could halve it again because it's veg beds, so take out the paths, I guess. But that's how we do. When we use it in agroforestry, which we're going to do next, we do it as a compost tea brewer, and we'll go into that. Also, when we do a lot of tree planting, so every year we plant hundreds, if not thousands, of trees. We use it as a tree dunk as well. So all the roots go into the IMO dunk as well as a pre-inoculant. So we use it for, and like I said, if we have enough, we'd love to put it in our potting mix as well. So it goes in everything. It's basically half of one of those buckets. Yeah, and that'll make 5 of those. Yep, so the potting mix that we want to make is we want to do 2 buckets of our Bokashi vermicompost from our glass house, which we're going to see tomorrow, or today I think. We do 1 bucket of farm loam, sieved, because again, I think it's really important the seedlings germinate in the soil of the farm. We do half a bucket of IMO, and if we have it, our biochar, we're trying to build a big biochar burner at the moment, but then we want to add half a bucket of crushed biochar into that as well, and that's the potting mix. So we want the biochar to be the perlite, to be the drainage material, the IMO is the inoculant, the Bokashi is the compost, the feed, and then the loam is hopefully the microbial kind of like farm element of getting the seedlings used to our farm.
Did you say that the loam 2 years?
2 years it sits in a loam bin, yeah, to kill all the weed seed off and everything, yeah.
And that's scrapings.
And that's path scrapings, yeah. So the guys will also chop and drop into the path if the beds can't take any more chop and drop. So they're actively composting into the paths as well, and that's what we harvest. And we're walking it and packing it down, and the compaction, the worms love it. And so that's what the guys harvest. They take about that much path scrapings to keep the beds high, and that's what goes into a loam bin to then be sieved, and then
How often do you do the path?
do path once a year. Yeah, once a year.
Then you just scrape like the top layer off of
Yeah, just take the top layer off your bed.
and the loam bin is
The loam bin I'll show you, yeah.
Want to have a sniff? Have you edited in this out?
That's what we do. There is a natural.
That smell beautiful.
Called they follow a natural farm technique.
Okay. And basically, it will probably go to 112, 114. Okay, so the same principle. You probably won't need to turn this, but please keep an eye on it, because this is your end result. Okay, and then it will then naturally do. And then if you want to raise it a little bit, try turning it and oxygenating it if you want to get the levels up, because the warmer it is, that means there's more microbes multiplying, so you're going to get more with your handful in consistency.
How long are you roughly monitoring that one?
That'll be probably about 7 to 10 days.
Slightly less.
Yeah, because there's not so much carbohydrates.
Check it.
It's still because, you know, we've had it before, and oh yeah, it's IO4, 119, and you think, okay, that's only happened once, but.
We choose to sieve the loam before we do it, and then that's the job done, because then we haven't got to sieve the IMO, so it's always sieved to take out the rocks and the sticks and stuff like that. It's important for us because of the blocker as well. May not be that important for you, so we choose to leave it. And if you are going to use a loam, test how wet it is before you put it down, before you start to hydrate it as well. So, you know, if you're going to put like a wet soil in there because it's been outside, don't and then add loads of water. And like anything, like any cake or bread, if you find the mix is quite wet, just try to add some more dry material into it and get that kind of squeeze it. A few drops with your finger, level back again as well. But yeah, once it's at that stage, to be honest, we just use it because we want to use so much of it. Because there's such a demand. But then Russell can put that into Hessian sacks to allow it to breathe. Goes into another IMO box, a storage box. We allow it to stay there. It will dry up. It will go into like a cyst form again, and then we'll use that when we need it. And that's really like the potting mix or the liquid tea or the liquid IMO if we want to use that, basically. But that is IMO 1 to 4 every stage. Amazingly, we did it all in one day. I can't really know how we did it in one day. But anyway, so it's good to do it in one day and not tomorrow.
I did go home tired.
But yeah. Yeah, just again, like anything, like nice, cool, dark, you know, not in open sun, not hot and sweaty, like just a nice, cool environment, to be honest. Ours goes in the glass house, so it does get a little bit hot, but it goes into another cedar box, basically. But we use it, that it's like constantly up and down, depleted, used again, so there's hardly ever any stuff to leave behind anyway, to be honest.
Is there like a best use by date, you know, because obviously it's alive?
Yeah, I mean, the more you use it at that stage, the more potent and alive and diverse it is. Yeah. If you dry it, you're going to lose diversity. You just will naturally. That's when you want to use it, basically, if you can. Yeah.
If you do dry it, sorry, do you need to water it before you put it on the ground, or just?
Yeah, you want to hydrate it. Yeah. So we make.
After putting it on the ground, just water it.
Yeah. So Russell, this is actually Russell's soil block table. So when we make the potting mix, it all gets mixed in those proportions. Russell then hydrates it, because we do soil blocks, it's a wet mix anyway to make the blocks, and that's what hydrates it all. You could take that IMO and you could put it into a finished compost pile, to be honest. So if you've done a compost pile that you're not going to turn again, it's done. You could take that IMO, put it into the compost pile, allow it to then inoculate the compost pile, and then just use the compost. You know, or you could put it into a loam pile if that loam pile is finished. What you don't want to do is then put it into a system where you're going to turn it and heat it up again, of course. But you could, put that into a compost pile that's now sitting for a year to mature, and just do it for that way. And then when you put your compost out or use your compost, you're also using the IMO at the same time. We're just not a compost farm. That's the thing. This and the food waste is our only form of composting, and this isn't really composting. It's growing an inoculant.
For everyone, this is a first to have IMO 3 and 4 in the same bin. But now I'm thinking, where am I going to turn it out to? On the floor. You
may find tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow, it may start to heat up, to be honest. So we may be able to see, you may be able to at least put your hand on it and see how much it heats up. Yeah. Yep, so we don't want to. Yeah, so we use rainwater. We're lucky enough to have the tanks. If we do have to use rainwater, we let it gas off for 24 hours, basically. Last year we had to go onto our mains because someone left the irrigation pump on and drained all our water tanks in a weekend. And so, but usually we have rain tanks with a UV filter to help us that. But any of the inoculants that we make, and any of the inoculants hopefully you guys will make, just let your tap water sit for 24 hours to gas off, and that will get rid of the chlorine in your water, and then you can use it after that. That makes it edible if you're using rainwater, because everything we're going to make tomorrow is basically edible apart from one thing. If you use rainwater, don't eat it, please, because it's got bits and bugs in it. But yeah.
I think you can add humic acid to the tap water to neutralise.
Could be. No idea, but we collect humic acid from our worms, but possibly, so who knows, investigate. Oh, great, well, there you go. We'll use rainwater then. Good to know. These tanks back here, these green tanks are our rainwater tanks, yeah. Yeah, it goes through this system here with a UV filter, and then that goes everywhere in the farm. So our 2 glass houses are rainwater, and then there's taps in the field that we can get the rainwater out to as well. Yeah, it's really simple, but to be honest, what our favourite is blue barrels as well. Like, we love blue barrels. So we have the blue barrels, and then we can let them fill up as well. IBCs are fantastic for collecting rainwater as well, having a few IBCs as well. But rainwater is the one, we want to use basically as much as possible, because we don't want the nasty stuff in our mains water, which is quite depressing. But brilliant. Any questions on 1 to 4 before we go into 5? I did a massive research project looking at compost tea in America. Basically, where I came away from it wondering more about it than I went knowing about it, because half the people loved it, half the people hated it. I couldn't really get a defining answer if it was good or bad or whatever. Because we are going to do it, we've chosen to use a vortex brewer. So if anyone's seen industrial compost tea brewers, they're like massive kettles, the way that they brew. They're very erratic and crazy and bubbly. If I was a microbe, I wouldn't want to go in there because you're banging around and bouncing everywhere. The whole idea of a vortex brewer is to slow vortex down to the bottom, and then it comes back through the pipe and it circulates through. It's a lot lower parts per million oxygen than a compost tea brewer is. So the idea is that a lot of the microbes we've collected in IMO are not kind of like adapted to go in these compost tea brewers that pump in millions of parts of oxygen into them anyway. Because with a lot of microbes, when we change the condition ever so slightly, they're gone basically. That's the problem. So the idea is that this mimics a stream, how things naturally travel. And so it's a lot slower. It caters towards a little bit of anaerobic and a little bit of aerobic. It's the balance between the two. It's not fully aerobic, it's not fully anaerobic either. So we make it because we're going to do it. We chose to use the vortex brewer, like biodynamic as well. The whole spinning and turning is that kind of direction, same as biodynamic. With a lot of compost tea brewers, what they'll do is they'll pre-make the solution like IMO 3. They'll add some molasses or sugar into it to get it going. They'll put it into the vortex brewer and let it bubble away. We don't do that. We just boil beetroot and then blend the beetroot and use beetroot as the sugar source for the microbes. That's all we do. That's why it's red, is because we boil and put beetroot into it as well. We put the IMO into a sack, into a tea bag. It goes down through, it spins round, the aeration gets it going. We leave it for about 48 to 72 hours. What will happen is a ginormous froth will come out like this. And then after that period, we put it into our spray tank and then we spray it onto the field, basically. And that is, they call it LIMO, liquid IMO, or compost tea, or the 5th stage. And that is literally it. IMO in a bag. The thing is that you can take your IMO in a bag, take that much, and that basically sprays the entire produce field, 2.5 acres, basically. Because we don't really care about it, because it's really about getting the solutions out more than anything, rather than this, we don't do it. But really, if you're going to do this from a microbial point of view, an IMO point of view, you have to look under the microscope, because you could just be spraying water out if it hasn't worked as well. So with compost teas, you've got to check it under microscopes. You also have to deep clean it every single time. We have to plunge down the pipe, clean through the tube, because we don't want anything nasty building up in there. So from a labour point of view, it does get quite big as well. And so that's pretty much the compost tea. But like I said, we don't do it for that. We do it because we're going to do it anyway, so we might as well just get it on and going. Lovely, isn't it? Last inoculant that we make on the farm, out of all the ones you've learned. So IMO is our Ferrari, sports car, high octane one that we want to do. This is the Toyota work vehicle, kind of like bog standard one, basically. So we get far more kind of like precision and diversity and everything from the IMO, but it takes a lot longer to make, and we can only make it in winter because we're too busy in the summer. So what we can make is something called JMS. So this is called, it's a microbial solution. It comes from the teachings of Jadam. So Jadam was created by Master Cho's son, Yongsheng Cho, and he saw the elements that his dad created and thought that elements were too complicated for farmers to do, so then he created a far simpler version of it, but making the IMO that way is a far more microbial diverse thing. That's what I mean. It's not a side-by-side thing. It really isn't. But what we like to do is we use them in conjunction. So in summer, in summer, when we can't make IMO, we swap over to JMS, basically. So JMS, the microbial solution, it's super simple to make and super cheap as well. It's a bucket of water or a barrel of water. We like to use the big blue barrels. You'll see that some of them at the end of the beds in the field at the moment. We use them as water barrels, and then we use them as a place to make JMS when we want to use it. So they're literally there next to the bed, and we get it out of watering cans. All we do is we have a plank of wood across the top. We have 2 tea bags. There's only got 1 at the moment. But 1 tea bag is full of IMO or a good compost or something that you're really happy with from a microbial point of view. We then have another tea bag next to it. On this side, you've got to imagine this will have 2 parboiled potatoes. That's literally it. Not to the point that they're soft, but to the point you can crush them. So that would have 2 potatoes, compost or an IMO, whatever you want. You dunk it in the water. You then massage the potato through the bag. The bag is there to stop the bits going into it, but you're massaging the potato through. That's going to release all the starches, which will feed the microbial bag next to it. You leave that. In summer, it only takes about 24 hours if it's nice and hot. In 24 hours, you'll get all these bubbles come up. And then once you get a clear ring around the bubbles, around the circumference of the barrel, it's ready to use. And that is literally JMS. Once the bubbles disperse, you've lost the diversity. It's that clear ring around the top that shows you that you have the peak diversity captured from that bag. Smells like banana bread again. Some of my mates, they like to bath in the barrel because they reckon it cures their eczema. I'm not a doctor. I will not say it cures eczema, but some of my mates like to do it. But it's a really powerful microbial solution. We love to use it during the late summer dip. So when all the plants are absolutely knackered, squashes, courgettes, for example, beans, they're knackered from the summer. We love to use JMS, get it on the plants, and there's just a big zing in their overall appearance. Greens come out a lot more, everything stands up again. It's a really good, powerful tool that we can have as growers to quickly get it out. And it costs you 2 ball potatoes if you're not growing them, basically. And that's pretty much it. And that's JMS, it's that simple. So we like to, we use it in the summer, So the IMOs in the winter, we make as much as possible, and then in the summers, we swap over to JMS when we don't have time to do that. We can just make it in the field, basically. So every veg bed, once they're fully growing, will have a blue barrel against it, and that blue barrel's there for water, but we also make the JMS, and all the guys will do, once the bubbles are there, they'll dunk their watering cans. We don't have to dilute it. They'll dunk the watering cans, and then they'll just water the bed with it, basically. It's really good. Really good in propagation systems as well. So if you have a nursery, if you have a glass house, you can also use it to irrigate and water your plants as well. It's a really powerful microbial solution, pretty much. And that is literally JMS. That simple.
And you don't need to dilute it or anything?
No, we should literally dunk the watering cans in and water the bed, basically. Yeah. And we know that a blue barrel does 40 metres of our beds, basically. So that's what we do. Yeah. You don't want to disturb the barrels, so it is good practice to put like a sheet of plywood on top, that in case it rains, you don't want the bubbles to be disturbed by like the rain and stuff, because it's the bubbles that you're looking for. So we do also put if rain's coming, we'll put a piece of square wood on top just to keep the rain off it, so the bubbles don't get disturbed. But in summer, in the height of summer, 24 hours, 48 hours. Now it'll probably take like 4 days. Where I've taught it before, we've got them started in glass houses and polytunnels where it's nice and warm, so we get them activated even quicker. So you can get them activated quicker inside as well. I would love to put them in agroforestry systems because, again, that perennial woodland is also going to be capturing quite a lot at the same time. But that is JMS. So that's our summer microbial solution throughout the summer, basically, for propagation and vegetable farm, pretty much. Cool. So this is where we start the tour every single time because it's quite good. This was the final part of the farm that we finished. We started where the wind turbine is and we worked backwards pretty much. Basically it got to a point that we just didn't need any more food on the farm. It's just ridiculous. So we decided to make an ornamental garden. I only have Grace, that's it, you know, so Grace has a monumental task, and so it's trying to design gardens that she can just take care of as well. But we want the ornamental to fit into the overall philosophy of the farm as well as much as possible. So minimal inputs, biodiversity is key. British horticulture is going through this amazing renaissance at the moment in this idea. I always say, though, the problem is we focus on that and then the veg gardens stay the same. It's the vegetables as well that need to also have that movement, but we are going through that renaissance. Me and Grace are trying to figure out what's our role as gardeners in this new way. I come from quite high-end horticulture, you know, where you wouldn't allow roses to creep and nettles to be in the beds and stuff like that. So it's a big shift for me as well. How we're playing it now is basically we'll do a massive weed about now in the spring, and then we won't weed it again till the midsummer, and then we'll do a massive weed in the midsummer, and then we'll leave it be. So that's kind of our most minimal intervention that we're doing on it. This was like a little woodland garden we made. My office used to be where the cars were. I was in a porter cabin, used to make me seasick because the builders built it on an angle. But the porter cabin used to be there. This was car park up to this Prunus cerasifera. So this was all car park originally, and we dug it all up. And then what we want to do was create like an edimental / food forest ornamental garden is what we were going for. So there are things that will have you at the undertaker by the afternoon in here, but there are also really delicious things in here as well. We don't pick from here really, it's just a display piece more than anything. So all the trees are nut trees and berries and edible trees basically there as well, so who knows. Ones that I love, so the one I love is over here. So this is Tunis sinensis. Can only offer you a couple of leaves. Well, take that brack and break a leaf off and smell it. A chef will tell you it's called the French onion soup tree. I call it the beef hula hoop tree because it literally tastes and smells like beef hula hoops. That's one we're really excited for. So that's Tunis sinensis. We can make a really delicious onion beef stock from that. It's got more vitamin E than any other plant that we can eat. There's a chef called Emil van der Stack in the Netherlands. He has a Michelin star food forest restaurant, and he takes the bark and he turns it into a thin sushi paper as well. And you can also take the leaf, chop it up, put it in things like butter, and then have like this really beefy butter flavour as well. So that's what we're really trying to push on the farm, is these unusual perennial edible trees, herbaceous plants, herbs and stuff like that. And then there's plums. The buddleias are just seeded in. We're just leaving them because Grace likes them. I do believe as a manager, I allow my growers to have ownership of their space. I think that's a big thing. I'm not a micromanager in any way. I have a veto, that's the rule. I have the veto. but I like them. So Grace loves them because she's into ecology and she likes the butterflies, so we manage it that way. So this is Grace's area, and I have total faith in her, and she's an amazing grower as well, so I'm really happy with that. We have things like Sweet Sicily, Solomon Seal. We use Solomon Seal as an asparagus alternative. It's got a lovely pea flavour to it. And like I said, it's just kind of a bit of fun, this garden as well. One that we really like that you'll see everywhere, you're more than welcome to try, is this pink flowering one here. It's a perennial Claytonia. It's Claytonia siberica. Tastes exactly like beetroot leaf. And it self-seeds everywhere. So that's one we're quite excited for. Our perennial salad at the moment is one of our bulk plants in perennial salad. Like intrigued by the idea of like ecological topography. And so when we had the get-go to like build a garden here, I really wanted to design it and use topography as a main foundation of it. I didn't want to just create another flat garden. And so round the potting shed, you won't see it today, but there's Dartmoor in the distance, and it's very hilly round here in the distance, and we wanted to kind of mimic that landscape. I love the gardens of like rubble gardens with like goat trails, and part of the experience is that you explore it as much as possible, and so that's what we created. So we were lucky that down the road in Yellen they've demolished the power station, so we bought 380 tonnes of the rubble. It cost £11 a tonne, so it worked out vastly cheaper than compost did anyway. And I did want to really build a recycled aggregate garden, you know, like John Little. I spent a little bit of time with Peter Corn, so I really wanted to like try and have that here as much as possible. Mainly because aggregate mulches are so good for biodiversity. Like that's the key thing. This garden hasn't been irrigated for 3 years now, so it went through last year's drought perfectly fine. We don't have to stake it, we don't have to feed it, we don't do anything basically apart from keeping on top of the weeds. Again, we're trying to explore that idea, so we want a certain amount of weeds for biodiversity in here. So Grace is always actively editing it and changing it and deciding kind of like what to do. Charlie at NEP's doing great work in this, so he's done a big chart on like self-seeding aggressive nature of plants, and he's done categories, and we want to do our own one now as well. So Grace knows that oxeye daisy, way too invasive, so when it's germinated she'll rip it out in great handfuls, whereas something like flow mist we want more of and she'll allow it, so we're working on that basically. It's really exciting. So we made banks really steep that plants would struggle to colonise, so those remain quite open for things like solitary bees and insects and beetles. We have bowls like sunbathing bowls, so you see these hips and dips in the mounds. They're south-facing with a little wind protection wall, so things like snakes and lizards have a place to sunbathe, and then we have areas get really thick with vegetation and dense that other things can hide. So we try to again create just a mosaic of different diversities in the rubble garden. I always say we definitely got the toilets in the canteen, there's loads of porcelain, and you'll always find a football mug somewhere in here. Man United or Chelsea, I don't know, it's one of the others. So we definitely got those. And that's what we decided. We rented a dumper and digger for 3 weeks and we just had fun. It looked like a BMX park when we did it. And then we were going for about 8 inches of rubble as a mulch on top of those topsoil mounds is what we were going for basically. I was absolutely blown away with it last year. It was so beautiful. 90% of the plants went in as bare root as well. Little roots that we put in. The only thing we had to plant were the grasses or the warm season grasses, because in winter they don't want to be put in bare root. So the only thing that we bought in as pots were the warm season grasses, but everything else went in as little roots. And the garden is designed to very much be one of colonisation, and so the plants that come up, they're here to be self-seeding and fill the gaps, and we edit it through. So that was one big thing that we wanted to do. What we're really excited about now, it wasn't a nuclear power plant. Everyone thinks it's a nuclear power plant. It wasn't a nuclear power plant. We had the rubble tested, but what we're excited about is that we're starting to introduce perennial foods in here. And so there's an argument to be had that we can make recycled aggregate beautiful gardens that also feed us as well as ornamental as well. So sea kale is one of our popular vegetables now. Victorians nearly ate it into extinction. Toby, the head chef, has told me he never wants me to grow broccoli again because he only wants sea kale broccoli tops instead. And so that's brilliant. So I've replaced that with a perennial, and it loves the rubble garden. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful at this time of year for harvesting, and you can force it like a rhubarb and create a really delicious nutty stem, and it lives for about 40 years and it's drought resistant. Really delicious cooked green. Right now though, it's a really good salad plant as well, so we're putting it into our salads. I think its common name, one of its common name is Cherokee green. Cherokee Native Americans used to cultivate it and eat it, well not cultivate it, but eat it. But we're learning a lot about this idea of edimentals as well, these ornamental edible perennial plants as well. So Rebecca lacinatus is one. Saltbush is another one that we really like in here. And we want to just introduce more and more edible. Those pickled oxeye daisy buds you had, they got harvested from the rubble garden because it's a really efficient place to pick oxeye daisy as well. And all the guys basically get the edible flowers from here as well. So what's really nice is in summer you'll see they look like little goats in the mountains. They're going through and harvesting a lot of the edible flowers as well as part of our picks. We pick a lot of edible flowers.